Okay, so we're going to get into the Logos section of class. For many of you, there's a couple of you sitting here, John and Donnie, who are going to see differences from Logos 5 to Logos 6. And there have been some pretty big changes from Logos 5 to Logos 6. So, but for most of you freshmen, you're not familiar with, or sophomores now, I guess. You're not familiar with Logos 5, so I'll try not to say, okay, this was a big change from 5 to 6, but I still, had to walk uphill in the snow to school both directions. So there are going to be some times where I'm going to mention that more for me than anything else. The other thing is this version is only about a month or so old, maybe a month and a half. And while I have played with it, I haven't explored all the new features in depth. So there are going to be a few things that I'll share with you that are new features that, I know how they function, but, as far as the real practical use of them, some of them I will be able to share with you, some maybe not so much. So we'll talk about that as we go through. We're going to spend a pretty big chunk of class from here through Research Week and on beyond Research Week on this software. We'll probably spend about 20 hours in the classroom on it. Probably at least put pretty close, so that you really kind of have a sense of how the tool works. How many of you have spent time watching the videos on the Logos website about how some things function? Okay, I would recommend, even though we're going to do that, we're going to go through things, I would still strongly recommend that you look at those videos. They're all very short. Most of them are 2 to 3 minutes. I think there's a couple that are 6 or 7 minutes. It's not like you have to sit down for an hour and watch a video, okay? And if you go to the Logos site and you go to support, there's a link to the video section. I strongly recommend that you go through those videos. Also, Logos 6 most likely came with what's called quick start videos, and I've got the link to them on my startup up here. And that'll walk you through some of those videos as well. That's always good reinforcement. One of the problems with Logos, and I tease Denny, because Denny has sat in on this class, I think we're talking 6 times now. This is very much like Greek. And I know that Will has reminded you that if you don't stay up with your vocabulary with Greek, what happens?
You lose it.
You lose it. A lot of what I'm going to show you in this class, if you don't practice it, if you don't keep working with it, you'll forget how to do it. This program at times is not particularly intuitive, especially for some of the more complex exegetical stuff that we're going to do. So it's a sequence of steps that you have to learn to do, and we'll do it in class. I'll show you how to do it. You'll do it with me, and oh yeah, that's really easy. And 2 days later, you'll go, now how did he do that? Because the challenge is, I want you to do it with me. I want you to use the software as you see me use the software. But that means also that it's very difficult for you to write down how to do something. The other problem with writing it down, as I've learned in just trying to explain it to people and write it down, you have to type like 6 pages worth of material for a pretty basic step, because you got to go to this menu, you go to this submenu, you right-click on this, you then look in that submenu and you find this, and you right-click on that, and then you select this. Just writing all that out just takes forever. Using it is the best tool. Using it and doing it over and over and getting some muscle memory with the program will be your best friend. That also comes with one caveat, and I mentioned it the other day at the end of class. I'll mention it now, and I'll mention it more times, I'm certain. Stay with me. You are going to be tempted to say, I know what he's talking about now. I've played with it, so I'm going to chase this little rabbit, and I'm going to be off in, exploring maps or something. And while it may be that everything I tell you during that section you already know and you're just bored to tears, the problem with drifting is that you may miss something that you don't know, and it may be something that you need to know. So try your best to stay with me. The other problem that I have with people drifting is I'll be talking about how to do visual filters, and all of a sudden somebody will go, I'll call them and they're like, in this map, how do I go from here to here in the map? It's like, well, we're not talking about maps right now. Oh, okay, and I kind of get the, well, I wanted to learn about maps right now because that's what I'm playing with. Everybody will go together. We'll get through all the material, okay? We'll cover just about every aspect of this program in class. So be patient. If you want to tinker with maps, we'll get there, all right? But when you chase rabbits, you may do something that causes the program to crash, or you may get stuck somewhere that you can't get out of or whatever, and then you can't get back to where I am. So do your best to stay with me. I understand the temptation. It's a cool tool. You're going to go past something and go, oh, look, a rabbit. I want to just chase that rabbit. Resist that temptation when you can, okay? All right. We are also recording this class, this part of the class, so this should be on Global Preacher Training at some point. So that may be helpful, may not, I don't know. Okay, so if you start Logos, this is the home screen. This is where we basically start when you first launch Logos. The home screen has some advantages. We're gonna get beyond the home screen and really learn to get started without the home screen. But when you first buy Logos, this is how its default setup is. It launches. Now, there's been some interesting changes to the home screen that I really like. One is you'll notice, and we'll kind of go over the interface for just a second, but you'll notice this bar across the top of the program window. And right here and here, it tells you what it's done recently as far as your system. Samuel just mentioned this morning he was having a problem with his, but he said, it's always downloading updates. Well, that's kind of true. I mean, Logos really does send you a lot of updates. When you think about it, you're dealing with a digital library. That's what you're working with. You're not just working with a piece of software. You're actually working with a piece of software that connects you to your digital library. And depending on what library you purchased, be it silver, gold, platinum, portfolio, whatever, you are going to have a number of resources, a number of digital books in your library. Well, if they found typos in one of those books, guess what? You're going to get an update. Now, when you multiply that by potentially hundreds, if not thousands of books, what are the chances that they have updates pretty regular? Pretty much all the time. And people complain about this. To me, that's a good thing. They aren't fixing bugs, although sometimes they are. Their primary purpose isn't to fix bugs. Their primary purpose is to keep your library up to date, fix the problems that they have found with typos or links and that kind of stuff. And with a program this large and a library as vast as what we're dealing with, you are going to have some human error from time to time, some things that don't link right, some things that don't function correctly, and so they're always working on that. So this tells me that recently 32 of my resources were updated, and it also installed Logos 6.0b on my machine. Now, if I click on this, it'll show me exactly what resources were updated. Now, I don't usually care that much which ones, but they want to make sure that they're keeping you informed on what they're doing on your library. And so just by clicking on it, it will show you all of the books that were updated in the last update. You also have an X next to that, and so I can click on that and get it out of my way. Once I've read it and I realize, okay, they updated 32 resources, I don't need that to be on the top of my screen all the time, so I can get rid of it. The same thing is with 6.0b. If you click on it, you can get to release notes. And if I go to release notes, it's probably going to open my web browser, go to their web page, and it's going to show me all of the things that they've added in 6b. Okay, so it looks like they've got lots of bug fixes. Looks like they've added some new feature issues that I might want to be aware of. And so I can read what the new version does and what some of the changes were. Okay, so just by clicking on that, I can get to all of that, which is handy. Sometimes they've added new features that you aren't aware of, a new functionality that you're not aware of, and by clicking on the release notes, it'll tell you. Okay, so that's just kind of the maintenance side of all of that. The other significant change to the homepage is that the homepage used to be horizontal. For those of you that were in Logos 5, it kind of ran this way, and you had to flip pages and kind of go from it. Now it's all vertical. It's much like a web browser, which I think makes more sense for most people. We'll talk about the content that's in these windows in just a minute. But I kind of like the fact that it's more vertical than the old horizontal way. It just seems to make more sense. But you'll notice at the top, this very top bar here, this gray bar along the top, that's basically your program bar or your menu bar. You have three main icons that control the entire program. The little house is home, and that'll bring you to this page. Okay, the little house brings you to the home page. The book icon is how you interface with your library, and the search icon, the magnifying glass, is how you perform searches. Now, there are lots of different ways to get to searches, and we're going to spend a lot of time searching. That's one of the most powerful features of Logos. So there are other ways to do searches without clicking on the magnifying glass, but that's the most prominent way. So you really have these three core concepts in the menu bar. Get home, deal with your books, or search your books. And that's really, the entire program revolves around those functions, okay? Next you have some menus. And you have the document menu. Now, one of the changes that I want to make to the document menu while we're here is when you click on documents, it's going to open a window. This window is not very well organized initially, but I want you to click on the column that says type. And what that does is that actually organizes your window by type. And initially, you probably don't have much in there unless you've been tinkering. But the advantage of this is now you'll see all the different kinds of documents you can create. You can create a bibliography, you can do clippings, you can do notes, passage list, prayer list, reading list or plan, sentence diagrams, syntax search, visual filters, word find puzzles, and word lists. And if you don't sort this by type, let me show you mine, for example. If I don't sort it by type, these are all of the different documents I have in Logos. Now, I've been using it for a while, so I have tons. So I'm looking for a word list or a clippings file on the Lord's Supper. Well, where is it? You'll notice that this isn't even really alphabetical. I can sort it alphabetically, but it may be hard for me to find that passage list that I'm looking for or that visual filter or whatever I'm looking for. Whereas if I organize it by type, if I click on type a couple of times, you'll see now it groups all of the word lists together, all the word find puzzles together, all the passage lists. And now if I'm looking for my clippings, now I can just go in and there's the Lord's Supper clipping. It was the second one in the list. But I'm only dealing with this many documents instead of the 100 or so documents that I have. So I really find organizing this document list by type to be the most efficient. You can do whatever you want, but I'm going to share with you what I've learned works best for me. Tinker with it other ways. You can sort it by name or you can sort it by date if you want, but I find leaving it set sorted by type to be the most useful because I usually know what I'm looking for when I go in here. We're going to eventually go through each one of these and talk about them and how to make them and all that kind of stuff. The second one is your guides. Guides is really kind of the engine behind Logos. You have basically four guides that become the hub. You have the passage guide. Hey.
Sorry.
Oh, no, I heard the traffic was really bad.
That's pretty bad.
You've got the passage guide. You've got an exegetical guide. You've got a Bible word study guide. And then you've got a topic guide. Those are really the four key ones. They have added in Logos 5, they started this sermon starter guide. I've played with it some. I'm not real excited about it, especially for preacher students. I mean, I guess if you were a Bible class teacher and they asked you to do a sermon in Sunday church using the Sermon Starter Guide to help you figure out how to put a sermon together would be a good deal. But for you all, it's a crutch that I think might send you down the wrong paths at times on how to set up a sermon. So I don't find it very valuable for you. You should have better ways, especially if you're going to do expository preaching or do any exegetical work. You should have a better sense of how to put a sermon together than using their Sermon Starter Guide. We'll touch on it in the class, but we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. And then you'll also notice that it has a placeholder template. What that means is that you can create your own custom guides with the fields that you want all over the place. You can create your own passage guide or your own exegetical guide that has only the things in it that you want, and we'll look at how to do that, and we'll play with that as time goes along. So guides become very important. Yeah.
We don't have the placeholder template.
You don't have placeholder template.
No.
We have a My Passage Guide.
Yeah.
You have a My Passage Guide? That's because you already used the placeholder template then. Because when we took it in class before, I showed you how to customize it.
Okay.
So now, are you guys using 5 or 6?
6A.
Interesting. Let's see if I can figure that out. At the bottom, you'll see make a new guide template.
Yep.
You should have that.
Yeah, we do have that.
You have that? Everybody's got that? Okay. It may be that I clicked on make a new guide template and then didn't do anything with it, and it added that placeholder template in because I never did any. I didn't finish it. So that might be why I've got a placeholder template and you don't. But we'll tinker with that and see if we can figure it out. But this guides menu is really, these are the power tools in Logos. You really need to learn how to use these, and we're gonna start exploring them today because they are so fundamental to the program. But these are really where the rubber meets the road, and we'll walk through them a little bit later on. The next menu is the tools menu, and this is basically where you find everything else in Logos. They've done some better organization than they had in the past. You now have library tools, collections, and I'll just kind of give you some concepts as we walk through them so you have a sense of what they do. You know, when you're dealing with 1,000 books, or many of you, if you bought silver, you probably got 700 or 800 books. If you bought something higher than silver, some of you bought gold, some of you bought platinum. If you bought platinum, you probably have over 1,000 books in your library. When you organize books, on real books, paper books, on a bookshelf, how do you organize them?
Alphabetically or by author?
Okay, so you can put them alphabetically by author. That's one way to do it.
By topic.
By topic, right? Why do you organize your hardback books by topic?
So when you're looking for something, you should have an easier time finding it.
Yeah. Well, what collections do is collections allow you to organize your library any way you want. You could organize them by author, but you could also put all of your archaeology books in a collection. That way, when you're searching for Jericho, for example, because you're trying to explore it from an archaeology standpoint, you just search your archaeology books. You don't search your entire 1,000-book library. Now, that used to be more critical than it is now. Back in the old days, when Logos was on floppy disks, when you did a search for something like Jericho, you used to have this choice of search your entire library. And when you said, I want to search my entire library for Jericho, it would literally bring up a box that said, are you sure you want to do this? And if you clicked yes, what it was saying is go have lunch, come back in a couple of hours, and I might be finished, right? I mean, and we're going to talk about how the searching is done differently now that has sped all that up. But because of the search structure, it used to take a very long time to search your entire library. Now it can search your entire library in a matter of seconds, literally. So it's not so much of a problem. But if you have 1,000 books and you search for Jericho and you find 100 hits, but only 10 of them have to do with archaeology, how are you going to sort out the other 90, right? I mean, it would be better if you created an archaeology collection and then just search that collection so that you can narrow down your search. Anybody do a Google search online and get like 1 million hits for whatever you're looking? What's the problem with that?
You got a lot of information to siphon.
Yeah, and you're never going to sort through 1 million hits, right? You're going to look at the first few pages and hope that what you want is there. What's the problem with that search? Typically.
It's really not specific enough.
It's too broad,
It's
right? You need to learn to narrow down your searches. Well, collections will allow you to do that, okay? Favorites is just like favorites in your web browser. You can add favorites, which are basically links to parts of your books or documents or word lists or searches or whatever. You can store all those in your favorites. I'll show you how I manage favorites. But favorites is kind of, if you think about it as bookmarking, like in your web browser, it's very, very similar. Highlighting is where we're going to find all kinds of highlighter pens, and we can make our own custom highlighters. We'll spend some time doing that. History is like your web browser history. It keeps track of where you've been in your library, what books you've looked at, what pages you looked at. And that becomes advantageous when you're going through something and an hour later while you're doing some research you think, okay, I looked in one of my dictionaries and I found that article, but I didn't mark it in my favorites and I don't remember where it was. How did I get there and what was it? Well, you can actually open up the history and you can step back through your last hour and you can find where you've been. Wikipedia is a connection to Wikipedia. That should be deleted. That will have some interesting connections that you will see that are interesting. Social, these are new tools, group tools, community notes, and ask the author. You now can ask the author of a particular book a question, and if he's in the community, he may respond. I've not had a need to ask the author. Most of the books I use, the authors have been dead for quite a while now, I would assume. So, community notes are a way that you can make notes in your books and make them available to everybody. Do we have any Kindle users? Anybody use a Kindle? Okay, you've seen community notes in your Kindle probably. You're reading a book and it's already underlined. It's usually with a faint ... and it'll have a little number, and it'll tell you how many people have underlined that same passage. Those are community notes. That's the concept, is if you've underlined something and you think it's important, you can share that with the Logos community, and that'll tell you how many people thought that what was being underlined there was important. The problem that I have with community notes is a lot of times I'll see something underlined, and it'll say 250 people underlined it, and I'm going, why on earth did they underline that? I mean, it really isn't the significant point here. Why did they think that was cool to underline? So community notes, again, are just kind of everybody's opinion of what's important, so take them with a grain of salt. Group tools, what Logos is really pushing toward, and we may experiment with it a little bit in this class. I honestly haven't dug into it deeply enough, but I understand the power of it. Logos has slowly changed to an organization, a company called Faith Life. It used to just be Logos Bible Software. They're now part of a bigger company called Faith Life. And Faith Life is a group, a denominational group, that has built these online tools where you can create study groups that are connected to your Logos software. So for example, you could start, if you were doing a Sunday morning Bible class, you could create a Faith Life group. And you can invite all of the members of your Bible class to join this Faith Life group. And online, you could use tools to try to engage them in the study, to ask them questions, to research during the week, to do various things. And there are some tools in Logos, if they're Logos users, that would help facilitate that. So we'll play with those a little bit just to get you aware of them. I've not ever done a full-blown group, but one of the ones I'm thinking about doing is a BV alumni Logos group. So that, for example, John's an alum. He's taken this class before when it was Logos 5. But now that it's Logos 6, we could probably create a Faith Life group. You've got 3. Now that we have a Faith Life group, I could post things that say, hey, there's a new tool. Or I could say, is Logos 6 worth the upgrade? And answer questions and that kind of stuff, and we could use this kind of dynamic online group to deal with all that. So we may explore a little bit of
And
that.
only people in the group that have access to it?
Yeah, yeah, you can do it a couple of different ways. I think you can create a public group that anybody can join and see, or you can create a private group that you have to be invited to join and that kind of stuff. The next section is reference, and you'll see Atlas. That's where you access maps and those kinds of materials. Bible Sense Lexicon is relatively new. You know, we recognize that words are used in different senses. For example, if I refer to you as brother, what do I mean, Casey?
Either their sibling or brother in Christ.
Right, so there's a spiritual brother kind of sense to the word, but there's also my brother, my natural sibling brother may also be in the room. Well, which one am I using? What tells you whether I mean spiritual brother or physical brother, typically? Context, right? So what Logos has done is they've developed a Bible Sense Lexicon where they're Bible study experts, and using other tools like Laonida's semantic domains and others, they've created a dictionary that's trying to give you and say, when you look at this word, this is the sense of this word in this context. This is the range of senses for this word, and this is the one we think they're using here. That's all fine and good. It's gotten much better in version 6. In version 5, it wasn't complete, so most of your words didn't even come up with a Bible sense. More and more words are using Bible sense now, and we'll see that when we do the exegetical guide. But again, this is sometimes men's opinion of how a word's being used, and if you're not careful, if you don't double check them, and you just accept everything they tell you, hey, glad you finally made it. And so if you don't double check them and you don't really work to, make sure that they've done their work accurately, you may accept something that's not exactly accurate. You follow? Does that make sense? Okay, so the next one is Fact Book. And Fact Book is basically, in the old version, they used to have 3 tools. They used to have biblical people, biblical things, and biblical places. They've now rolled all of that into one tool called the Fact Book. And the Fact Book really is the place that you go to find information. And Logos does a good job of tooltips, by the way. You notice the screen. If you just point at Fact Book, it says Fact Book shows information and media about people, places, charts, things, events, and other topics. So you've got some help when you don't know what these things are. Just point at them, and the tooltips will tell you. But the Fact Book has become much more powerful, especially in Logos 6. There are a couple of very cool tools that we will talk about in the Fact Book that make it even more usable than it was before. Reading lists are a way to share books that you're reading. You'll notice on my homepage there is this Today's Readings. You can create reading plans and reading lists and share them with the Logos community. I don't find reading lists that particularly helpful. I don't really care what some denominational guy is reading this week and what his reading list is, but we'll talk about how a different way of using that may be valuable. Timeline is basically a massive timeline that's created by your individual library. Timeline has some tremendous potential. It's one of those tools that I've had a hard time working into my workflow, but if you are a history guy, if history is something that really fascinates you, you are going to love Timeline. What Logos has done basically is, and we'll see it as we go through, but they've put time markers in all of your books. If a dictionary article, for example, mentions a date or an event in history, it mentions the destruction of Jerusalem, they've put a little time marker in that book. It's just a tag. It's part of the metadata of the book. But what Timeline does is it searches your entire library for all of those time-based tags, and organizes them in a massive timeline that is completely searchable. We'll look at how to do this. But if you're looking at the date, for example, 70 AD for the destruction of Jerusalem, what else historically was happening in that period of time? And you can kind of look at a slice of time and see all the other events that your books record were happening or were thought to be happening during that period of time. So it really, I've been very surprised a number of times by corresponding historical events that I knew about, but I didn't know they were happening at the same time some other major event was happening. And so being able to see that and filter that is kind of cool. Again, if you're a history buff, you're going to love Timeline. If you don't like history, you're probably not going to find it very, very usable. Next is utilities. And the first one is personal books. You can actually create your own books that feed into your Logos library. Here's the one caveat. You have to start with a Microsoft Word document, which drives me bonkers, mainly because I don't use Microsoft Word anymore. But you can actually, so for example, the notes that you take in Thessalonians class, when you're finished with that, you could convert that into a Microsoft Word document. If it's already in Word, you're great. But you could take all of your notes from Thessalonians and turn it into a Logos book that would then be part of your library. And when you looked at, Philippians, you could see your notes as a resource in Philippians. There are some limitations that we'll talk about, but you can do personal books. One of the limitations is making those available for others. And we'll talk about that. I would love for us to be able to do that as a school, for example, and distribute course notes at the end of a course. You take James and 1st and 2nd Peter, and at the end of the course, I give you my James and 1st and 2nd Peter notes as a Logos book to add to your library. There are some limitations to distributing that make that difficult that they're supposedly solving. We'll take a look and see if they've fixed them in this. Program settings. This is kind of the heartbeat of the program as far as if you want to change things. And for example, let's click on this one for just a second because I want to mention a couple of things. Yours most likely says under General, Startup, Open, @to Home, which is where you should have it. But you can open it to all kinds of things so that when the program launches, it opens. But you've got all kinds of settings in here, okay? The one that for Mac users, and I don't think program scaling is available in Windows. If you go down to accessibility.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so you guys have, so it's both now. For a while it was on one platform and not the other. Program scaling is going to be your friend. One of the challenges with Logos is how much you can fit on your screen. There is so much information here, and there are so many panels sometimes that you want to have open, that just how much room you have on your monitor becomes an issue. I actually, in my office, have a 29-inch horizontal monitor. If you've been in my office, you've seen it. I love it for Logos because I have all of these workspaces built that use that entire 29-inch space to have columns for lexicons, columns for my Bibles, columns for my commentaries. My favorites and my highlighters are over here, and I can just do everything I want. Well, the funny part is when I do that on my laptop, watch what happens. This is probably dumb, but I'm going to use like my wide basic study and show you what happens if I click this layout workspace and try to open it on my laptop screen at this resolution. Those are all my columns. Now that's not usable. I mean, your Bible can't be this narrow. I mean, it just doesn't work, right? And if I can't get to all my icons at the top of my menus. I mean, it just doesn't work. So screen real estate becomes very, very important. And program scaling, I'm going to close all those for a second. Program scaling allows you to adjust the size of the entire program. So you can mess with it just a little bit. For example, set program scaling to 80%. And what you'll notice is not only does it change the text in the windows, if if I close program scaling for a second so you can see it. Not only did it change the size of the text in the windows, look at how much more information I have on my screen, but look at how small it made my program bar. It gave me some of that real estate back. Now, at 80%, sometimes I feel like on my laptop that I need a magnifying glass to see things, but this does give you more room. So program scaling can be valuable, especially if you're on a Mac with a smaller screen. Gary, it's a 13-inch. You know, that screen sometimes feels constraining. So if you've got good eyes, drop the program scaling down to 90 or 80%, and you may find that you can fit more stuff on the screen. If you've got room, or if your eyes are giving you a problem, change your program scaling up to 110 or 120%, and you'll find that it's a little bit easier on your eyes. For the sake of this class, I'm using 110% just so that you guys can see in the back. I usually have mine set at 100%, but I also have a monster monitor that I connect this to most of the time. So I am also constrained in this class with the resolution of the projector I'm using. So I can't fit as much on my screen to project it as I would normally fit on my laptop screen. So mine may look like it's a little bit lower resolution even than yours, so that we can see in class, and also so that we can project it. But that's what's going on. So that's the one thing, immediately I wanted you to know about program settings. Visual copy is a new tool. This is the one I think Haley mentioned the other day. Visual copy lets you copy a verse out of a book or out of your Bible, and then it kind of makes a PowerPoint slide out of it. It makes a graphic out of it. And then you have links to it so that you can then send that graphic to Facebook or Twitter or connect with your social media. So one of the ways you might be able to jazz up your daily Facebook post is with this visual copy. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, most studies that have looked at gaining attention on social media tell us that if you have a photo or a visual, people will stop at that faster than just scanning through a list of text and trying to make your post stand out. And so using visual copy may be something that you find. We'll play with it, and we'll walk through how it works. And it's got some limitations, but it is pretty cool. It's kind of a nice little touch. Also, if you were putting a PowerPoint presentation together and you needed a slide of a particular verse, you might want to go this route. Later on in this class, we're going to talk about how to do good PowerPoint. And most of the time, I wouldn't suggest you use this tool to create those slides, but you might.
Can I ask a question about visual copy?
Sure.
We can go with that later. Is there a way to search, like they have one on the home screen every day with like a specific graphic for that particular verse? Is there a way to just search for the verses that they've already put specific graphics for?
Not that I've seen. What's happening on the homepage is every day somebody at Logos is making one and posting it for you to look at, but I don't know of a way to search their website for all the ones they've created.
They do have an application that is all it is the photos and verses that they've used previously.
It's an app for your phone, you mean?
There is an application for your phone, yeah.
Okay.
But I don't know. I've only fiddled with it a little bit.
What's it called? Do you know? I'm not familiar with it, but apparently there's an app where you can maybe find some of that stuff.
Bible Screen is what it's called.
Bible Screens?
Bible Screen.
Screen. Okay, so might look for that app. I wasn't familiar with that app. I need to check that out. Okay, next section is passage, and these are all tools that deal with passages. So you have copy Bible verses, which does exactly what you think it does. It copies a Bible passage out of a Bible and lets you paste it somewhere. That may sound like, why don't you just select it and use Control-C or Control-V? There's a lot of power in copy Bible verses. As a matter of fact, when I was in school, I set up a particular style for copy Bible verses so that when I started a new book, for example, if I was taking the Gospel of John, I could go into copy Bible verses and say, John, the entire book, copy, open my Word document or my Pages document and say paste. and it would paste every verse on its own line with 3 blank lines in between, and it would paste in the entire book of John. So that first day I'm ready to start taking notes in the Gospel of John for class lecture with spaces between each verse so that I can start typing stuff in. So Copy Bible Verses has a lot of real power to it, and we'll look at that. Explorer is a way to kind of explore all your resources. It's kind of like Windows Explorer if you're a Windows user, only I think with much more power. Passage Analysis provides us with a number of little tools that we'll look at that help us break down passages. Text Comparison compares multiple versions at the same time, and there's a lot of different ways we can compare those versions. And so, oftentimes we'll tell you one of the things you should do is look at your passage that you're preaching from or you're about to teach or whatever, or just trying to study. Look at it in multiple versions. Well, Text Comparison lets you do that, but then it compares those versions in a number of different ways so that you can see how one is different from the other. What words changed from the NAS to the New King James? Specifically, what words? Well, you could compare them yourselves, but they highlight them and mark through them, and we'll look at all that. Lookup are some powerful search tools. Cited by is going to, say you're looking at James chapter 1, verse 2. You're studying James chapter 1, verse 2. You can use the Cited By tool, and what it'll do is it'll search your entire library to see any place that somebody has referenced James chapter 1, verse 2 in your entire library. That's a powerful lookup feature. Information is a window that you can have open that constantly updates depending on what your cursor is pointed at, and you can even tell it what books to put in it. We'll look at that probably later on this morning. Power Lookup is another quick search find that we'll talk about. It's got kind of some special indication, but it gets the text of the references in the current article and looks up a word in all your dictionaries. So it's kind of a dictionary search. Pronunciation. Now this only works with Greek. I don't believe they've added Hebrew yet. They are going to supposedly. But you can actually pronounce Greek words. You can actually have it read your Greek New Testament to you out loud, and it can pronounce all of those, or you can just pronounce individual words if you're confused on how to pronounce them. And then interactive media really is a completely new section in Logos6. And we'll spend some time here. There's a couple of tools that you are going to find very elementary. Greek Alphabet Tutor teaches you the Greek alphabet. Well, Will has already done that, and if you're still struggling with the Greek alphabet, most likely you're retaking Greek 1 at some time in the future. So that's all this tool does, is teach you the Greek alphabet. Now, it's cool if you didn't know how to do the Greek alphabet. If you're a regular member of the church that bought Logos, this would teach them how to do some basic alphabet work in Greek. So that it's a great start. Now, for those of us that don't know Hebrew, learning the Hebrew alphabet is a challenge. It looks like Martian to me. I mean, you think Greek letters don't look like English letters. Wait till you look at some Hebrew letters. They don't look anything like letters. They look like chicken scratch. So this is a tool that would help you learn the Hebrew alphabet. Now, that will be helpful to you in looking up Hebrew words and that kind of stuff. At least having a sense of what the Hebrew is saying phonetically. So you may want to use that tool to learn the Hebrew alphabet. Hebrew cantillations is, again, more on Hebrew. Morphology charts is new and still confusing me. Hopefully by the time we get to it in this class, I'll understand it better. Numeric converters convert things like, okay, what is a talent? New Testament talks about a talent. How much is a talent? Or an omer. They were allowed 1 omer of manna. Is that 5 gallons or is that a cup? I don't know. So numeric converter can help you with all of that kind of stuff. Proverbs Explorer and Psalms Explorer. Psalms Explorer is probably the coolest one, but Proverbs Explorer is this new way to break down the Proverbs topically and thematically and explore them. Psalms does the same thing. Psalms interface The Psalms Explorer interface is actually very cool. It's these little bubbles that move around. It's kind of neat. We'll deal with that. Text converter. Text converter is, I when I first heard about it, I thought, ooh, that's really cool. And then I realized what it really does, and I went, oh, okay, that's okay. Well, all text converter does is it allows you to take original language and transliterate it. But that is cool. If you need to transliterate an entire Greek sentence, for example, just copying the Greek sentence out of your Greek text and using this tool will give you lots of different ways to transliterate it. And you say copy, and then you paste it into your Word document or in your Pages document, and you transliterated the Greek sentence. So it does save some time, especially academically, if you're writing a lot of papers or if you're doing that kind of work. The average user probably isn't going to use text converter that much. And then weights and measures converter will do the same thing. So, and then there's a link to all interactive resources. So those are the three major areas in the menu bar: documents, guides, and tools. And we're going to go over each one of these and play with them. The next thing that you have is an input box, or sometimes they refer to it as the command box. The command box is your friend. And as you become more of a power user with Logos, you're going to find that sometimes it's easier to use the command box than it is to do anything else. For example, if I wanted to, right now, from the home page, if I wanted to open my New American Standard Bible, well, I could go to my library and I could try to find New American, or I could just type NASB in the command box. And you'll notice it searched my library and says New American Standard Bible 95 Update. I click on it. It's going to open a new window to my New American Standard. Okay? If I say NKJV, it's going to let me open my New King James. Okay? So if I want to open my favorites, we talked about what favorites are a little bit, but if I just type favorites, as soon as I start to try to type favorites, I click, there's my favorites. So typing things into the command box to get them open can be a really fast way. You have to learn their abbreviations a little bit, but most of them are pretty straightforward. But you can find books that you use on a regular basis or start open layouts. You can do all kinds of things from the command box. And I'll try as often as I can to show you some commands as we go through that allow you to tweak this interface. For example, one of my favorites is just close all. And that closes all the current windows. And in this case, will take me back to my home page. Or it will just leave my panels blank so that I can open whatever I need.
How did you learn that it was close all? Is there a list somewhere of their abbreviations?
No, I think there is on their website. I think you can find a list of the abbreviations. Some of them you just pick up from users, and I'm going to share quite a few of them with you. I'll see if they've got an updated list. There's an update somewhere. That brings up a good question, and that is, how do you learn beyond what I'm going to have time to share with you? And this program is changing constantly. I mean, like any other software tool today, about every 18 to 24 months, they seem to be trying to push out a new version that has all kinds of new tools and all kinds of new ways to do that. One of the reasons is, yes, they want you to buy an upgrade. Guess what? They're a company that needs to make profit, and so, it's funny. It's funny how often I hear the complaining of the community that, well, you just sold me Logos 5 2 years ago, and now you want to sell me Logos 6. It's like, well, do you ever complain about that to Microsoft? Well, no, because Microsoft just went from 2009 to 2013. But most software companies do that, right? I mean, that's how they stay in business, is by offering you new tools and giving you the chance to pay to upgrade, all right? So you don't have to upgrade. You can stay in Logos 5. How long did you use Logos 3?
I can't keep track. It was what?
For a long time.
3 years?
Yeah. So, I mean, you don't have to upgrade. Now, you miss out on all the cool new tools.
Yeah.
There's the marketing. But you don't have to upgrade. The other thing is that Logos does something that, in my view, is a little sneaky. But again, it it's business. Logos has made the promise that you will never pay for their software. And they've kept that promise. But understand what they mean. You have two things that make Logos function. The software, the core program, and the resources that you access. The books, the electronic books, right? Those two things are separate in Logos' mind. And they really should be in our minds too. You buy additional books to add to this software. You follow the logic? So they never charge for the core program. They charge for bigger libraries. So oftentimes when they want you to update or they want you to upgrade, for example, when we went from Logos 5 to Logos 6, they send you a thing that says you could upgrade to Logos 6 for $350. Well, I thought your software was free. Well, it is. If you look, what they've done is they've changed the libraries, and they're saying for $365 you get the new Logos software, the core program, plus all these new books. We're really just charging you for the new books and some of the databases that make some of the new tools work. You follow? You pay for the resources. Now, if you're willing to wait long enough, for example, Logos 6, the core program is going to be available for free next month. They usually will make you wait about 3 months before you can strip down and just get the core program for free. The problem with that is that some of the new tools don't work without adding new resources. So it's a little sneaky, but again, they're a company that's trying to make money and trying to offer you new tools that you want, that you're willing to pay for. If you choose to stay at Logos 6 now forever, you can, and it will probably run just fine on your machines for many years to come. But each time they launch a new version, they're gonna dangle the, ooh, look at this new tool. We've got this new Psalms Explorer. Look at, ooh, you need this, right? And for the low price of whatever, you can upgrade and get all this stuff. Okay? So, the problem is that with any other company, they understand that we have a Baruch assault mindset, from Willy Wonka. We want it now. We know we could get it cheaper if we waited 3 months, but that new tool looks so cool. Okay, I'll pay you a little bit for it now, and I'll get it. So that's kind of the way that works. But as far as continuing to learn the program as it changes, there are resources on their website that I strongly recommend that you learn to use. One is called the forums. And if you go to a web browser, Safari, for example, there are links on their webpage, but I never know what they are. Logos.com/forums. And it's probably going to default back to forums.logos.com, maybe. And my internet connection is giving me grief. It's because I'm still connected to the office. Let me change to classroom and get. Okay, it's community.logos.com/forums. But what the forums do is the forums are a place where users discuss problems, bugs, techniques, all kinds of things. And you'll notice along this left-hand side, there's a place where you can make suggestions about the software. This thing doesn't look like it's very much in focus, does it to you? This focus is okay. Files, Logos 6, Logos 5, Logos 4, Android apps, iPhone apps. These are all forums that focus on those subjects. And when you go in, you can read what people are doing. And it has become a great source of learning for me over the time. The other thing is, at the top of this page, you'll notice that there's a wiki. Does anybody know what a wiki is? What is Wikipedia? Why is it called Wikipedia?
Could you customize it? You can edit it.
Right.
You can add your own into it.
A wiki is a group website that anybody can edit. Okay, you can add your own material to it. Well, there's a wiki for Logos that you can add to, and it's broken down by versions. So you've got Logos 4, Logos 5, Logos 6. For example, if you look at Logos 5, there's a whole section on Logos 5 video tutorials. And if you click on this, you're going to see user-created videos, screen captures, that teach you how to do a specific thing. The one that you should notice most significantly is mine, right here. I've got 2 of them that I've posted here. But there are some people out there that have made screen captures or screen videos to try to teach you how to do something, and they're available on this wiki. So, and you could, ultimately, if you do your own, you could post them, and you could post them here and teach people how to do it. For example, Logos6 commands. Okay, here's your list that you just asked about as far as close all. It's on the wiki, and you can, all of these are commands and it explains them and how to use them in the command box. So these are all things that you could type into the command box to do various things. And there's a direct list of where they all are. So the wiki becomes a great source. You don't have to edit it yourself, but you can go, there's video tutorials, there's upgrades and cross-grade information, there's commands, there's tips and troubleshooting, release notes, all kinds of stuff on the wiki. Okay, so go to the forums, go to the wikis, and you will find that they can be very helpful as you continue to learn. This is a deep program. Even at 20 hours in the classroom, I'm not going to scratch the surface on what you can do with this. So you have to kind of make a commitment yourself to learn long term, and both the forums and the wiki can be a great place to learn more. Okay, so. All right, so you have the command box. Next to the command box on yours is probably a large blank space here. Now, I intentionally left some shortcuts. It's called the shortcut space. And I'm going to teach you how you can fill the shortcut space with resources and things that you need to get to all the time. For example, I have my NASB here, and if I want to open my New American Standard, all I have to do is click that shortcut, and it's going to open the NASB for me. So you can put all kinds of shortcuts there to various parts of the program. We'll talk about that as we go along. You also have this little 2 arrows in a circle. Mine's spinning right now. That's indicating whether you're synchronizing with their servers or not, whether you're downloading something or whether you're uploading something. Now, here's what you are uploading when you upload things to Logos. And you don't do it, the program does it. It keeps track of all of your settings and all of your workspaces and all of it. They know what books you should have in your library and all of that kind of stuff. And so it's constantly sending those settings back and forth to Logos, mainly so that you have a backup of your settings. For example, if you have a particular layout and you've saved it on your laptop, but your laptop died, well, you aren't going to have to rebuild that layout later. If you download Logos and synchronize back to their servers with your username and password, it's going to remember all those layouts that you made. It's going to remember all those visual filters. It's going to remember all those documents you created. And it's uploading them to their servers kind of as a backup. So that's what's happening with that. And every now and then you'll see that little thing spinning, or it'll tell you that it can't synchronize. Maybe you've got an online problem like Haley's computer right now. It may give you a little exclamation mark that says, well, I can't synchronize for some reason, if it's trying to. So, the next one is layouts. Layouts is a place where you can create custom desktops. Now, I've got quite a few, and I just showed you one that really didn't help too much because it's for a wide monitor. But, as we go through, we're going to talk about it moving away from the home page and creating your own desktops. For example, if you're studying a New Testament book, if you're studying in the library and you're studying in New Testament books, what are some books that you would have sitting around your desk almost all the time? What do you think you might always want to have out open on your real physical desk if you were studying a New Testament book?
TDNT.
Okay, you might use TDNT if that's a go-to resource.
Greek Bible.
A Greek Bible. Maybe a lexicon, right? Maybe a package of colored pencils. Maybe some dictionaries.
Maybe some commentaries.
Maybe some commentaries. Maybe some commentaries.
Maybe.
Okay. You can create layouts that have all of those books open on your desktop when you need them. Now, would those books be different if you were studying an Old Testament book?
Yes.
Yeah, because you might want some Hebrew resources and some Hebrew issues as well. So you can customize these desktops to whatever you want. And we're gonna learn to make some basic ones in the next few days, but we're gonna learn eventually how to make some pretty complex, interactive desktops, workspaces, where all the resources work together. Okay. So, and then you have a help menu that can get you to, oh, cool. That's new. There's a connection to the online forums, and there's a connection to the user-edited wiki right there. They've added that. Plus a connection to their online video tutorials. So right there in the help menu, see, it pays to click on something. I haven't looked at this help menu since the last time I taught this class because I don't need help, right? But I didn't realize that they had added those links. So it pays to click on something to explore. Questions about the program bar? You see, I mean, just as basic overview, that shows up everywhere. This top bar never goes away. Okay, it's always out there. It's always there. That's why you might want to use program scaling to make it as small as possible, because otherwise with program scaling, it can take up a big chunk of your real estate and limits what you have available for the rest of your windows. Yes?
Question, will you get to how to add like the quick start videos to that?
Yes. Yep. We'll talk about shortcuts. But it looks like, yes, I will. We'll talk about how to do the shortcuts. Okay, so back to the home page. The next row down has changed, and I showed you that it showed you your updates. It showed you what version was installed, but it also has their logo, which doesn't mean much. That used to link to their website. It doesn't seem to anymore. You also have this homepage Bible study starter that we'll talk about in a minute. I don't want to go there yet. But that's how, at the beginning, you start a very powerful Bible study. And we'll talk about that tool in just a second. On the right side, this connects to your account. If you click on your name, it's going to go to their website. It's going to log into your account. And it's going to show you the things you've purchased. It's going to show you what subscriptions you have, what orders you've placed, what wish list. I mean, it does everything. This is how you manage your account on Logos online. So if you want to know, hey, I bought this book, but it's not in my library, go to your account and make sure that you see it. The last one is the cog, and the cog is kind of the preferences pane. And what the cog does is it controls what appears in this home page panel. Home page panel. What makes up all of these snippets of articles in the home page? I mean, how do they decide what to put in front of you? Now, by default, they're probably all turned on, at least the content side. But you have two things in the new home page. One is the sidebar, and the other is the content panel. Now, you'll notice you can control what's in the sidebar. For example, today's prayers and today's readings are the only two things that I have turned on in my sidebar. You may have some other things, but I think probably by default that's all they turn on. Now, those are custom prayer lists and custom reading plans that I've created. We don't have any yet, so it's probably not showing up. You can click Add and create a prayer list or create a reading plan. We'll do that in just a minute. But you can turn those off and on as you need to as well. The rest of the sidebar really is filled with what are called lectionaries. Most of the denominations, not most, but many, for example, the Catholics, the Lutherans, the Methodists, all have these lectionary books. Basically, they suggest each day what they should be reading in their Bible and what they should be studying. If you have a Bible class, for example, if you were a Lutheran and you went to Bible class, all the Lutheran churches have a lectionary that should be telling them what passages of Scripture they should be studying in Bible class that day. I mean, that's what the lectionary is kind of for in some regard. So if you were one of those denominations, you could turn all those on and it would show you that daily lectionary material. Since we don't use lectionaries, we don't have one, and we don't need one, and so none of those are turned on, and I don't ever find the lectionaries useful, but you need to know that that's what's happening in that sidebar. The other thing is you have all of these other options. Choose preferred Bible, choose preferred lectionary. I don't need that, so I'm going to turn that off. Daily devotionals, just leave everything turned on for just a second and I'll show you. Click off of that window and it'll refresh based on your settings. If you changed something, it'll reload, which may take a second. But at the top of the window, if you scroll to the top of the window, you're going to have a panel now that is choose your preferred Bible. For the sake of this class, hear me carefully. For the sake of this class, I want everyone to choose the New American Standard 95 Update Bible. You may be an ESV guy. You may be an NKJV guy. I'm not saying your ESV is bad, although it is. I'm not saying that your NKJV is a problem. I just, as we do searches, I want us all getting the same results so that you can stay with me. And if you're searching the ESV and I'm searching the NAS, I'm going to get, I didn't get what you got. Well, you're searching a completely different text. You follow? So for the purposes of right now, you can change it when you're not in this class. Just come back to the home page and change it to the ESV or the New King James or whatever you want while you're working outside of the class. But at the start of each class, make sure that you're on the New American Standard, okay? This setting, what this does is this tells the program that this is my preferred Bible. When in doubt, show me what the New American Standard says. Now, the advantage of that is anytime there's a hyperlink to a reference of any kind, when you hover over it, it's going to show you the text from the New American Standard, okay? And that'll just be easy as far as the class goes. And then as you scroll through, you're going to notice a number of different articles. And some of them will have this little more button at the bottom. What are they trying to do? Well, they're trying to do two things. First, they're trying to remind you of the books that you have. Your homepage will be different than mine. I guarantee it, you don't have the same articles on your homepage that I do. Now, the only time you'll have the same one is if you have the same devotional books. Like if we scroll down to a daily devotional section, you probably have one that says Connect the Testaments, a one-year devotional with Bible reading. You may have this one because it is the devotional for January 20th. Now, you may not if you don't have that book, but it just depends. But the rest of this, what's it doing? Well, it's looking at books that you have in your library, and it's grabbing snippets, articles, and it's posting them on the homepage for two reasons. One is to encourage your Bible study, but also this is a way of sharing with you a reminder of what you have in your library. They want to remind you of the resources that you have available to you in your library. You know, one of the great disadvantages to an electronic library is that you don't have these bookshelves that you can turn around and look at and say, where are all my archaeology books? What do they look like on the shelf, right? And you forget, oh wait, I have that archaeology book. Well, one of the advantages to the homepage is it's reminding you of books that you have. It's also trying to sell you more. You follow? It's a company. Part of their job is to try to get you to spend more money. So, for example, on mine, Logos community pricing. Now, there are a couple that I'm willing to put up with because of the great deals that you can get. One is this Logos community pricing. What Logos does is when they're thinking about launching a new book, they'll put it out to the community and say, what would you be willing to pay for this book? And you can say, you know, I'm willing to pay $15 if you ever produce that book. Some people will say, well, I'd be willing to pay $100 for that book. Well, depending on where you jumped in, a lot of times you'll get the book for what you said you'd pay for it, even if they charge more for it. Now, you can't just jump into everything and say, I'll pay $1. You know, that it doesn't work that way. But I have gotten some screaming deals by jumping in early and saying, that's a book that looks interesting to me and I think it's worth $20. Well, by the time they've produced it, they sell it for $50, but guess what? I got my copy for $20. So community pricing can be advantageous. But notice all the photos and the graphics. It's trying to create kind of a morning newspaper for you that includes, your devotional books, it's photos. All of these photos and things are in books that are either available or in your library. And you can control what shows up here by clicking on the cog. So once I choose a preferred Bible, I don't necessarily need that as part of my homepage unless I'm going to change it back and forth all the time. So once I choose one, I may choose to get rid of my preferred Bible on that. But daily devotionals, excerpts, the Faith Life blog is going to be something that they're going to probably try to sell you on Faith Life and all of that kind of stuff. You may choose to turn that off. From your library is library reminders of books that you own. Getting started are going to be articles about how to get started using Logos and tips and tricks and that kind of thing from time to time. The Logos academic blog is going to be more high-end user articles that are maybe more academic, technical in their nature. They may talk about semantic domains, or they may talk about syntactical analysis of the Greek New Testament or something. But if you're into that kind of stuff, you can turn those on. The Logos blog, the community pricing. Logos Prepubs is also a way that they test if they're going to make a book. They want to see, okay, here's this book. Is there enough interest in us producing this book? And so with Prepubs, you can go in and say, I would buy it, and if you sold it at this price, I would get it. So it's similar to community pricing, but a little bit different. Media is going to just search for photos and media resources. Messages is going to tell you about your account. The Proclaim blog. Proclaim is another tool, another product that Logos sells that is a worship system that you can put in your auditorium that connects Logos to your PowerPoint systems, and your preacher can do his lessons in Logos, send his PowerPoints and stuff into the system, and you basically can control the whole of the worship presentation from this Proclaim software. It gets pretty involved and it gets pretty expensive. For Bear Valley, it's like $250 a year to use it for our size. If your congregation is smaller, it's cheaper. If your congregation is larger, it's more expensive. It's not one that I've looked at for us. I just don't think it fits with what we do here. Recent reading lists is going to be stuff that you hear from other authors and other Logos users as far as what they're currently reading. And it'll post their reading lists. I really don't care about their reading lists, so I usually turn that off. And Verse of the Day is going to give you probably a visual copy, some graphic of their verse of the day, so that you can get excited about visual copy and do all that kind of stuff. So I usually turn the Proclaim blog off. I usually turn off the recent reading lists. I'm not all that interested in that stuff. I usually turn off Faith Life Women. Not big on the Faith Life Women's blog. The Faith Life blog I haven't found particularly helpful, so I usually leave default preferred lectionary off as well. And now when I click off, it's going to rebuild that homepage the way I want it and have the material on it that I need. Now, there's an interesting problem with the homepage, and that is as you learn to use Logos, you usually start skipping this homepage. You start loading straight into a workspace. And you really do miss out on this material, this information, which initially can be very helpful. Again, to remind you of the books that you have and the books that you own, and for other reasons. Just tips and tricks and links to the online videos and all that kind of stuff. So remember the homepage. Don't forget to go home from time to time. It can be helpful. This is one of those tools that I routinely forget about because I no longer use this layout. I use a different layout, and I've got mine set up so that when I launch Logos, it skips the homepage and goes straight into my layout. But we'll talk about why you shouldn't forget this for a couple of things. So, as far as just basics, that's the structure of the home screen. I mean, that's the basics of the program. Now, for example, one of the things it does in the sidebar is it says today's reading or today's prayers. we currently don't have a prayer list or a reading plan, but I can create a new prayer to get started. So I'm just going to click on create today's prayers. Yeah.
I just had a question back on that cog that was customizing it.
Uh-huh.
Because you said you usually have it set up one way and it seemed like you were changing things. Does it stay that way, or do you have to change it when you...
No, I turned them all back on so that I could demo them. Well, part of my problem is I have customized logos so much that I have to, before class, go in and try to turn all of my customizations off. Otherwise, I forget some of the things that are turned on because they don't show up anymore.
Gotcha.
And I forget they're there, so I usually go through and click everything on so that I can talk about it and remember to talk about it.
Thanks.
Otherwise, I'll forget. But yes, once you create those settings, it remembers them until you change them. That's part of that synchronization up to their servers as well. So I want to create a prayer list. I'm going to say add and click on create a prayer list. Now, I haven't done this from the home screen. That's very interesting. Is anybody else's not working?
Mine pulled it up, but
That's very interesting.
but I clicked on what you have here. I clicked on the create a new prayer list to get started.
Yeah, I went through documents.
Yeah, I was trying to do it from here, and it doesn't seem to want to open for
Add
me.
and it worked.
Huh?
I clicked add and it worked.
Okay, I can probably get to the same screen by going through documents and going to a prayer list. Does your window look something like this?
Yes.
Okay, so yours just did it. Mine wouldn't do it from the home page. But Gary, did you go to documents because it wasn't working from the home page, or because you just did it from documents?
I just did it from documents.
Okay.
Old habit.
Okay. So basically, you can start a prayer list. This is a basic form that you're going to see whenever you open a document or whenever you start one of these new features. You're going to get this panel. And the panel almost always starts with an untitled whatever. Untitled word list, untitled prayer list, untitled visual filter, untitled whatever, okay? And anytime you see this little pencil, do you see the little pencil next to the word? That's telling you that this is editable. So just click in it, and I'm going to say Michael's prayers. And then I just hit enter. Now you'll notice two things that happen. One is it titled this document Michael's prayers, but it also changed the title up in the tab. It doesn't say untitled prayer list up here anymore. Now, as soon as I did that, Logos saved this document. You don't have save buttons in Logos. That's good, and that's bad. The fact that it's always saving new stuff for you can be a pain, because when you go to your documents list, you're going to find tons of untitled whatevers. Because you clicked on prayer list or make a new prayer list, and you thought, I don't really need to make a new prayer list, so you close out of it. Well, guess what? It's already saved an untitled prayer list in your documents. So now you got to go to your documents, find it, and delete it if it's blank. Okay? I don't like that. That's just the way they've got it set up. But anyway, so I've got Michael's prayer list, and my prayer is for my ministry tech students, and I can put notes in here that they will
Throw a brain.
pass my class. Okay? I can tag it. I can create tags. And I write down here, and I know this is kind of small on my screen sometimes, but I can click to pray for this item. When do you want to say this prayer? I'm going to pray for this item. Right now the default is every day. But notice, if you click on every, you can say every 3 days. Click on days. You could say, I want to pray for it every day, every week, every month, once a year. I can say, I want to start praying for it today, and I want to pray every day for the next week. Okay? You got a lot of power here. Now, one of the advantages of this is I don't know how you manage your prayer life. I don't know if you manage your prayer life. I suggest that you start to look for ways to manage your prayer life. I'm going to later on in this course give you some ideas on how to do it, maybe with some other tools. There's an app for your phone called Echo that I like quite a bit these days. There are ways to do it with Siri if you have an iPhone and using reminders and that kind of stuff. But, I read a statistic once, and it's like 87.2% of all statistics are made up on the fly. I read a statistic one time that said 80% of the time when people say they will pray for you, they don't. Now, is that because they intentionally lied to you and have no intention to pray for you when they said, I'll pray for you? No, they just forgot. The truth of the matter is they just didn't write it down. And, our lives become filled with lots of issues. And if we don't write down what we want to pray about sometimes, we don't remember to pray. And so this is one tool that you could use to do that. You can add these. Now, I'm going to make this date today. So today is the 20th, right? I'm going to say start today, end today. And I'm just going to close this panel. Now, how do I close the panel? Up at the top, where you have the title of the tab, there's a little X. You can just close that, and it'll close the panel. In this case, it's going to take me back to my home page. And notice now I have Michael's prayers listed, and it's telling me today to pray for my ministry tech students. And if I hover over it, it tells me what my note was. Okay? So if I said pray for Hannah Duke, well, if I typed in because she's having surgery today at 11 o'clock or whatever, it'll remind me of that. Yes, sir.
When you had your part where you wrote that note, it also says answer.
Yep. We're going to talk about that. So I can pray about it, and when I pray about it, I can click on it, and it takes it away, right? So each day, I basically have a task list that is about, I prayed for that, check it off. It removes it from my screen. It tells me, your prayers are done for today. Are your prayers ever really done for today? No. But you know what I mean. At least at that point, you've said, I remember to pray for that. I checked it off. It disappears. Now, if you go to your documents, and if you've sorted it by type, as I told you, you should have a prayer list section, and you should have your prayer list there. Just click on it again, and it's going to open up. Now, if you click on that prayer, it's dark. It's grayed out mostly because you already did it, and so it knows you already did it. But I wanted to mention what Max just said. And notice that next to the notes, you now have an answer. I don't know if you've ever done this either, but this can be very cool to do in a prayer journal. Was your prayer answered? Do you feel that your prayer was answered? I mean, sometimes if I prayed that you all would pass and you all passed, well, at the end of this quarter, I may come in here and said, praise God, they all passed. If you create a prayer journal that not just lists your prayers, but also lists the answers, it can become powerfully encouraging to you. You start to look back over the days and weeks and months and start to realize all of the prayers that the Lord has answered. Sometimes we don't think about it. We pray for somebody that had surgery, and we pray that their surgery was successful. Okay, Deanna Brandt just had surgery, one of the members here at Bear Valley. Serious surgery over the weekend. We prayed that the surgery would go smoothly and that she would basically survive the surgery. Was that prayer answered? Yes. So write that down. She came through surgery fine. Our next prayer may be that the surgery would be successful and that it would help her condition. Well, a couple of months from now, we may find out the answer to that. Put that in. You basically create this journal that shows you every time the Lord has answered a prayer. So that can become very powerful in your prayer life, to strengthen your prayer life when you see how many times the Lord has answered, and specifically what answers you received. Now, it may be that the answer was no. Did He still answer your prayer?
Yes.
Yeah. So you might document those things as well, just to remind you that He doesn't always say yes, but He does answer. So that's what that tool is for. Max, you can take detailed notes on what you believe the answer was and how that answer manifested itself. And you can basically create a prayer journal. The neat part is you can have multiple prayer lists going for various things if you want, and you can have them show up wherever you want. So the problem with prayer lists is currently I haven't looked lately, so I'll look. I don't believe you can add to your prayer lists from your mobile devices, which is a downside. Last time I talked to them, they were working on that functionality. They may have added it, and I'm not aware, so I'll look. But that's a downside. You know, you're at church, somebody says, would you pray for me? I'm having surgery next Thursday. Sure. Let me go start up my laptop and open Logos and type that into my prayer list. That's kind of cumbersome to get stuff into Logos. Now, if their iPhone app or their iPad app added that functionality, you could just pull your phone app, add it in, and it would show up. That'd be great. The other thing is I don't often pray with Logos running. I do my prayers mostly in the morning. I don't get up, launch Logos, and say, what's my prayer list for this day? I manage it through other ways, and so I don't typically use this. But this is a tool that you have available to you that you can use, okay? If I go back to the home page, the same thing is true with reading plans. Reading plans can be very helpful to you in that they can help you, and for whatever reason these links aren't working, so I'm going to do mine through documents. But I can go open a new reading plan. And reading plans can be powerful because it's not just reading your Bible. Now, if you've heard me teach in class for any length of time, especially in the congregation, I get irritated with the read your Bible 15 minutes a day kind of philosophy. I think we do a disservice to our members by lulling them into a false sense of spiritual security by saying, if you would just read your Bible 15 minutes a day, and there's these cool plans that'll tell you what to read. You know, there's an Old Testament passage, a New Testament passage, and something out of Psalms and Proverbs, and they read it before they go to bed at night, and half the time they fall asleep halfway through reading it, and it becomes this check mark kind of mentality. I did my Bible reading for the day. Don't know that I really learned anything from it. I don't know that I really thought about it much. I just did my reading. Reading plans can reinforce that mentality if you're not careful. But there are also some other things that we can do as Bible class teachers and stuff using this tool that can be very powerful. So you have a few choices, and they've redesigned this tool. First is you can choose a predefined reading plan. So if I click on a predefined reading plan, notice all of the stuff that they have available. I've got a sentence right underneath the title here. Now, I need you to start to understand that these sentences are everywhere in Logos. When you do a search, there's a sentence. When you do just about anything, there's some kind of a sentence that says, this is what I want to do. And that's where you customize everything. That's where you determine what the search parameters are. In this case, it says read 5 days on spiritual growth in the New American Standard every day, starting today by myself. Okay? So I can change this to all of these reading plans. Now, most of these are brand new. They've added dozens of these reading plans that are new to Logos 6. I don't have a lot of experience with them, but for example, here's one that I just noticed. 30 Days with Jesus. I don't know what that is, but if I click on it, I'm going to say read 30 Days with Jesus in my New American Standard every day, and I'm going to say start. What it does is it says today I need to read about Jesus being foretold, and it's going to have me read Psalm 22, Isaiah 52, and 53. Okay? So that's my reading for today. Now, notice in the plan, and this is something else you need to start to get used to, notice all the blue lettering. What are those? They're hyperlinks, right? I mean, anytime you see blue, it's just like a website. They're hyperlinks to those passages in those books. Now, with Logos, there's a couple of cool things you can do. If I want to read Psalm 22, I don't have to open it. All I've got to do is hover over it. So just point at where it says Psalm 22, and you'll notice that it pulls up Psalm 22. Now, what does it pull Psalm 22 up in?
NASB.
Why did it choose the NASB?
Because you chose it as your preferred
Because you
Bible.
chose it as your preferred Bible. Anytime you have a hyperlink and you just do the hover to look at the verse, it's always going to use the New American Standard as long as you have that set as your preferred Bible. Okay? I can also click on Psalm 22, and what's it going to do? Open my New American Standard to Psalm 22, and notice the top. It says Start Reading. And I read through Psalm 22. So as I go through, I'm reading Psalm 22. It wants me to read the whole thing. And notice when I get to the end of Psalm 22, it says, keep reading Isaiah 52 and 53. So if I click on that, it's going to say start reading at the top, and it's going to tell me where I need to read to. And when I finish that reading for the day, I can say mark as read, and it's going to check that off of my list for the day, and I'm done. You follow? Now if I go back to my home page, I now have today's reading is checked off, but it tells me tomorrow and Thursday and Fridays. That is one of the cool things it's doing now that it didn't used to do, is it's projecting in your reading plan. So it's showing you what's coming up so that if you want to read ahead, you could. You follow? But I could then just jump into this next one and click on Matthew 1, and it would read and follow the reading list. Do you see basically how reading lists are working?
How do you get rid of that if you don't want to do that anymore?
Okay, go back to your documents, and under reading plans, right-click on the 30 Days with Jesus title and hit delete. And that should get rid of that one. And now if you go back to your home page, it's going to be blank again. But I want to talk about a couple of other kinds of reading plans. So click on reading plan again. You've got an untitled reading plan. So that's the predefined ones. You have all kinds. And when you look at all these predefined ones, you've got all kinds of stuff to choose from. 365 days ones. You've got all kinds of stuff that you can do with these predefined plans. But what I'm more interested in is generate a reading plan. Now I can do my own thing. So if I click generate a reading plan, all it gives me is my list. So again, you explain this sentence the way you want it, and that's how the plan will be generated. So right now it says read all passages by chapter or by pericope if you want. Now, the reason you're doing that is so that it doesn't break in the middle of a thought or in a weird break in a chapter. I mean, that's one of the problems with some of the read for 15 minutes a night. You jump into the middle of a context, you read for 15 minutes, you stop in the middle of another context, you go to sleep. The next night you jump back into the middle of it. Try to keep all that straight. So doing it by chapter or pericope, I'm going to say I'm going to do it by chapter. I'm going to read in my New American Standard. I'm going to read every day, starting today, for 1 year by myself. But, and if I click Start, it's going to divide the Bible into a 365-day. But we understand how this works, right? But now let's say that you're teaching through the Gospel of John. You're doing a Bible class for your congregation that is going to teach the Gospel of John. Wouldn't it be cool if you had them every day of that quarter do a reading out of the Gospel of John? Or to do a reading that week that's going to cover the material you're going to cover. So if you're going to try to cover the Gospel of John in 13 weeks, how much do they need to read of the Gospel of John every week in order to stay up with where you should be if you're going to try to do that? Now, I don't suggest you do that. We talked about that in teaching class later. But let's say we're going to do that. We're going to teach the Gospel of John. We're going to try to do it in 13 weeks. So read all passages. If I click on that, I don't want all passages, right? I just want the Gospel of John. Now, you probably don't have John in your list. because you make these as you need them. So down at the bottom, it says new reference range. Just type John. And right underneath that, title, just title John. Now you can call it the Gospel of John or whatever you want, but John and John will work, and hit save. And now in your list, you should have John. And if you click on it to open it back up under all passages, you should now have John in this list. Now that you've created that, you're not going to have to create it again, and it's going to show up in other places. So we want to read the Gospel of John. We're going to say by pericope, just because I want to make it break down maybe a little bit smaller sections. New American Standard, starting today, instead of in 1 year, I'm going to say in 13 weeks. Okay? Now, 13 weeks is 91 sessions.
You have to add that too.
I'm going to just zero that out. I'm just going to delete those so that it just says 13 weeks. So this is going to generate a list of 13 readings. You follow what I did? I'm not having them read every day. I'm just saying this week you need to read this much. And I'm going to say start.
So how did you delete the 91 sessions? Because for some reason...
I just selected it and deleted it out. I just selected it with my cursor and hit delete. So it generated this list. Now it's interesting that it's giving you Saturdays off for some reason. So I'm going to click edit and see if... Yeah. Read every day. Okay, here's the deal. This is a holdover from before. It's just reading every Monday, Wednesday, Friday because of something I did previously. Every day, if you want every day, make sure that you have all the days selected. And see it's updating on the fly.
So just clicking every day doesn't do it?
Well, apparently not. Every day that you tell it to, but selecting every day doesn't turn them all on by default, which is kind of weird. Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah, it didn't change mine either.
Huh. For whatever reason, it doesn't want you reading the Bible on Saturdays.
It's not the day that I'm missing, though.
Now, interesting, Saturday is automatically checked for mine. Is interesting. Okay, there may be a bug, or I may be missing a setting in this new one, but you start to see how you can customize this a bit.
Mine is skipping different days.
Okay, so if I just wanted them to read once a week, every weekday could be a choice. There's going to be Monday through Friday, because people don't read their Bibles on the weekends. So, it's kind of like a work week, you only read your Bible during your work week. But what I really want is just once a week for 13 weeks, right? To get the chunks that I wanted. I wanted a total of 13 weeks. So I just pick any single day of the week for them to do their reading, and it's going to break it down into 13 units. So week one they should read John 1. Now, what else does this do for me as a Bible class teacher? What did I just do for myself very quickly?
You set it yourself up, a study plan.
If I am determined to teach the Gospel of John in 13 weeks, this is what I have to cover every week. Now, sometimes, do you ever play the game where you count all the verses and you try to divide it and you do all that manually? Well, you can just come in here and create a reading plan and say, I've got 13 weeks. So just make sure you choose one day a week to break it down into 13. And this is telling you, week 2, you should cover John 2:1 through 4:6. Now again, I don't think that's the best way to approach a Bible class, but this at least gives you a breakdown of each week. If you're going to cover the entire gospel, how much material you have to cover each week. Yeah, Max?
I think it may have skipped, see, it skips Saturday, and then it goes 4 days, skips a day, 4 days, skips a day. I think because just the Gospel of John is not enough to do it every day, because I selected New Testament,
Could be.
and then it filled in all those other
Okay.
things.
Yeah, that could be. It's trying to figure out how much material you're trying to have them read that's manageable. So it's using some algorithms. So you're probably right. That's probably what it's doing. It's saying you don't need to read every day if you want to get through this all in 13 weeks.
Okay.
Unless you want to read one verse a day, you know. It tries to make it a manageable amount of reading. So now the other little tool that's here that's interesting is this. Notice it says by myself. This is the group tool through Faith Life. Okay? This is the connection to Faith Life. So I actually, quite a while back, created a Bear Valley Logos users in Faith Life. I haven't played with it much, but I created the group. I think it's me and one other person that was willing to do the test with me 4 years ago or wherever I did this. But I never fleshed this out. But I could create this reading plan and say, I want to read this with my Faith Life group, with my Bible class group. And now if I went to Bible class and I got all of those members to join the Faith Life group online, they'd get reminded if they went to Faith Life of what their reading is this week and what to do each day and that kind of stuff. They don't have to be Logos owners, but was that what you were going to ask?
Yeah, I wondered if everyone had to.
Yeah, Faith Life is a separate website that they can use. Now, if they have Logos, it's going to give them the links, and it's going to link to their Logos, and it's going to do that whole reading thing in their Bible. But you don't have to have Logos to join Faith Life. It's free, and it's for churches. So they could join the group, and I could communicate with them through the website. They just got to remember to go to it. But that's kind of cool that you can create this and push it out to people through this community if you create a community. Okay, those are some of the new group tools. So that's a cool way to do. Now, one of the other things I want you to notice is at the top of this window, notice what mine says, export to iCal. Windows users, what does yours say?
Export to Outlook.
Outlook. Basically, once you create a reading plan, you can send it to your calendar. On the Mac, it's iCal. And if I clicked on this, on each of these days, it would make a note, a to-do list, and it would say John 1 on the first one and so on. And it would automatically send it to my calendar. If it sends it to my calendar, where else do I have it in my life?
On your phone.
You probably have it on your phone because most likely you're synchronizing all of that kind of stuff together, you see? So, again, these hooks into your other devices can be really powerful in these reading lists if we start to think about them as teachers and what we want to help a Bible class go through and that kind of stuff. Okay, we'll keep going with the homepage after chapel. Bob and Ben.
Yes.
Here's the list of words for your word study. You can choose any of the words on the list to do your word study for this class. If you have questions or want some advice, let me know. I'll help you pick one if you want. But these are, because you guys are taking Thessalonians this quarter, right? So I gave key words from those books that'll kind of help support what you're learning in those other classes.
Cool. Thank you.
And you know we both came from Castle Rock?
Yeah, I knew that was going to be the issue.
They had that close to the coffee, and I don't. It's old.
Okay, so after a break for chapel, we've looked a little bit at reading lists, and you can play with those reading lists more and find some interesting things. It looked like there was another setting that, in reading plans, I guess, custom reading plan. The other thing that it will do is it'll let you choose books other than the Bible.
So one of the advantages for that to you is if a book, for example, that you have to read for a class here, one of the ones I know that sometimes is available to you in your Logos is the general introduction to the Bible that you guys have for a couple of different classes. You have to read chapters out of that. Well, you could go in and set up a reading plan for your quarter for those books, and they would, bring them up online, on your screen and let you read through them and that kind of stuff. So remember that reading plans can be for more than just Bible. If you want to read a particular book or you want to look at that, you can set up a reading plan for a different kind of book. Now, you noticed how many times I clicked on New Reading Plan just trying to show you this kind of thing. Watch what happens now. If I go into my reading plans, the only one that it took was the one that I actually said done and created the reading plan for. So as long as you don't hit that done button, it doesn't commit an empty, untitled plan for you. But once you do, it's going to be in there, and all you have to do is go into the document section, right-click it, and delete it out, and it'll go away. And I'm going to do the same thing for that prayer list. Any questions about prayer lists or reading plans? Pretty straightforward stuff you can tinker with. The real power of this homepage is what Logos used to call, I don't know if they still do, but what they used to call a homepage Bible study. In this passage box up in the upper right, left-hand corner of the screen, not the command box, but on the homepage, it says enter a passage or topic. This allows you to do what's called a homepage Bible study. And as it says, you can do it either by a passage or by a topic, depending on what you want to type at the time. So, for example, if you wanted to do a topical study on baptism, if you just start to type in baptism, don't hit the go button yet. But just by typing in baptism, look at what it brought up. Baptism of the Spirit, baptismal regeneration. Oh, it went away. Okay. Baptism of that was weird. Baptism of the dead, baptism of fire, all kinds of stuff. So you can pick one of these and do a topical study for that. If you typed in marriage customs, marriage feast, marriage present, marriage alliance, marriage of the Lamb, marriage licenses, violations of marriage, dowry. There's all kinds of stuff. Now notice dowry. Dowry is interesting because it doesn't have the word marriage, right? I mean, it's a related kind of topic. So a lot of times with topics anymore, Logos understands what topics are related and will suggest those things to you. We're not going to do a topical study from here right now. We're going to do something else, but we're going to do a text. But there's also some times when this homepage can help you out if you don't remember where something is, because it's connected to the pericope headings in your New Testament. So, for example, you want to do some study on David and Goliath. Jonathan, where is David and Goliath in the Old Testament? What are the verses? Jordan. I said Jonathan, didn't I?
Yeah, that's okay.
I looked at you and thought of an old student named Jonathan. Where is David and Goliath?
In the book of 1 Samuel.
Okay, where in 1 Samuel?
17, okay. Yeah.
What if you couldn't remember that?
Well, then you would type in David and Goliath.
Just type in Goliath. Watch what happens when you type in Goliath. Now, it's what it does is it searches the pericope headings of all the different Bibles that you have, and it suggests the range of verses for you. So if you can't remember it, sometimes you can find it, the Transfiguration. So, transfigure. I just get to transfig, and all of a sudden it's showing me Transfiguration, and it's showing me all of the different places. Notice it's even picking up the parallels. Do you want Matthew's account or Mark's account or Luke's account? Which one do you want? You follow? So being able to locate things like that can be very quick if you just type in something that would be related to the subject. You're still looking for a Bible passage, but it searches those pericope headings for you. You follow what's going on here? So that can be kind of cool. But for the case of just playing, let's go to Philippians 1. So type in Phil 1.1. Now, there's a lot of ways that you can type in a Bible passage in Logos, and it really isn't very picky. You can do 1:1, you can do 1.1. My guess is I can probably even do PH 1:1. Might take it a little longer. No, it didn't like 1:1, but 1.1 usually works. So there's lots of different ways you can type it in. You don't have to use a colon. That's okay. So we want Philippians 1:1. So just click on where it says Philippians 1:1 and say go. Or if you click on it, it should open your Bible to Philippians 1:1. Now, what's going to happen here is it's going to take a second, because what it's doing is it's creating what Logos refers to as a homepage Bible study. Okay? And what's going to happen is it's going to open a number of panels, and it's going to open a number of guides that are related to Philippians 1:1. One of the ways that I've heard Logos described before is that when you purchase Logos, a truck pulls up to your back door, and it's filled with all of these library books, right? You got this whole truck full of library books, and they unload it into your computer. And the last thing that steps off of the truck is the librarian that comes with the library. And that's essentially what just happened, is Logos, your librarian, just said, you said, librarian, I'm going to study Philippians 1:1. And your librarian said, okay, I got that. And now I want to show you everything that your librarian just did for you in a matter of just a few seconds, okay? Now, it's important to understand the layout that we have here and the structure that goes on in this body once you leave the home page, okay? You have panels. These panels are these boxes, okay? So when I refer to a panel, for example, this is the Bible panel. Do you see why? It's got 5 different Bibles that it opened up in the Bible panel, okay? And I'm going to show you how to choose which Bible's open and all of that kind of stuff. But for right now, it just picked probably the top 5 Bibles in its mind and opened those in. And then inside each panel, you have a tab. So this is the New American Standard tab. If I clicked on NKJV, I'd be in the NKJV tab, okay? The reason I make a big point of that is because as we work with this, I'm going to say click on the tab, and guys are like, where do I click? Okay, so the structure of this becomes important to just know this whole thing is a panel. So I may say in the commentary panel, click on the tab that says this and drag it here. You got to know what to click and drag it, okay? The other thing is this is where you close the tab, but not the panel. So I can close my New American Standard by clicking the X next to the name of the tab, and I can slowly close all of these. When I close the last one in the panel will close. There's not a way to close the whole panel. You just got to close the individual tabs in the panel. Once there are no more tabs, the panel will close. All right? So let's notice what it did. First, along the left-hand side, it opened a passage guide. You see it at the top. You see the tab that says... it goes that way. You see the passage guide says Philippians 1:1. Behind that is an exegetical guide panel, or tab. We'll look at that in just a minute. It opened a Bible panel with 5 versions. And then it opened a commentary panel right below that. It opened up the information window, and then it opened up a text comparison window. Now, this is all by default, and this is what happens when you run a homepage Bible study. This layout is what occurs when you do that from the homepage. Now, you'll also notice an interesting thing. In each tab, in the upper left-hand corner, you have a resource menu, okay? It usually looks like the cover of the book. And you see the little triangle next to it? That's telling you that that's a menu, okay? And you have all kinds of stuff in there. We're not going to go into the resource menu yet. But see this little A? See it down here? what that does is that links various panels together. So you can actually create a connection between panels so that right now, if I took this to Philippians 3:1, my commentary would go to Philippians 3:1 at the same time. So that link, and I'll show you how to create those links. It's real easy. But that's what's happening with that link. Yes?
So you can choose whatever commentary or book you want down there?
Yes, we can pick a preferred commentary. We can pick a preferred number of Bibles. We can customize all of that. Now, right now, none of that's customized. So what commentary did it bring up for you?
Oh, I'm working on downloading it.
Oh, okay.
New American. New Greek International.
New Greek International.
New Greek International. That's interesting.
This one, mine says the New International Greek.
Okay. It's interesting that it would pick that as the base commentary. But so we've got some information going on here. So let's kind of walk through. The first thing let's just deal with is the Bible panel. As I mentioned, you've got these various tabs, and if I click through, it changes to the New King James, changes to the ESV, the NIV, and the King James Version, the Authorized Version. Now, there are ways to do this without it opening multiple tabs, but for right now, we'll just deal with that. Whenever we're looking at a passage, right, we always want to see what it looks like in other translations. So it's always right here. And you can just click through and see what the ESV says. We'll explain this resource menu for Bibles in just a little bit. Right below it is the commentary menu. Now, what if this isn't the commentary you want? In the panel menu, in the resource menu right here, you see the little parallel lines? If you hover over it, it'll say parallel resource sets. If you click on that, it's going to give you all your other commentaries. Okay? It knows that you're looking at a commentary, so it goes through your library and shows you all your other commentaries.
Even ones that you've purchased will be there.
This should be only the ones that you've purchased.
Oh.
It should. I don't think it's trying to sell you anything in this layout. So these should all be books that you own. Now, the advantage of this, and we're also going to learn how to control the sequence of these ultimately. You can control which ones are at the top and which ones float to the bottom so that you can control the sequence. But if you want to look at a different one, just click on it. And it's going to swap out that commentary for the other one. You see? So parallel resources lets you get to all of them. You can also do it with the arrow keys. If your cursor is in, don't click on anything, but if your cursor is in that panel so that it's active, all you have to do is hit your arrow key, your forward arrow key will float through your various commentaries, and your back arrow key will go backwards through them. So if you want to look at what's next, that'll work. Now the same thing will happen with your Bible. Watch. We go up here, and I just click in my Bible panel to make it active. Do you see how the right above the tab, it gets darker? See right now this dark line above the Bible tab? Can you see that? That means that the Bible panel is active. If I click down here in the commentary, see how now it's giving me a visual cue that the commentary window is active? So whatever window is active, your forward and backward keys will work through the parallels. So if I click up here and hit my forward key, it goes to the New King James, goes to the ESV, goes to the NIV, and so on. And I can use my arrow keys to go backwards and forwards within that tab. Making sense? See what I'm doing? All right. In addition to that, you have a information window. Now, my information window, I need to click on hover because yours is probably set on hover. Point at the word saints. Just point at it with your cursor. Don't click on it. But you should see a bunch of information in the information window. Do you see it by pointing at it? Mm-hmm. What that's doing is it's actually looking up that word in various resources that you have available. You can, in the settings of the information window, you can tell it what to show and what not to show, and you can even tell it what resources to show up. For example, the first thing it's going to show is a definition, and you can say show definitions and show the entire definition. It'll show footnotes, the gloss, it'll show the lemma, all of that kind of stuff. We're going to talk about what all these things are.
Where did you change that to hover?
Right at the top of that panel, you've got on click or on hover. You see it right here? Update information on hover or update information on click.
Where's that panel from?
That's in the settings in the information window. Now, I'll be honest with you, I prefer, this is me, I prefer this to be on click, not on hover. Here's why. When it's on hover, watch what happens to this window. As I try to point at Timothy, it starts to update. But then I move to peace, it tries to update. I move to remembrance, it tries to update. Now, if you have a really fast computer with lots of memory and that's not a drag on your system, great. Leave it on hover. If your computer is struggling with updating that information, change it to on click. And then it doesn't update that until you click on the word. Just a single click will update the information window. Now, while we're talking about that, we need to talk about what's happening here. Logos is an extremely powerful program. It really is. And when you look at the fact that you're dealing with, 800 to 1,000 books in my library, I'm looking at over 3,000 books in my digital library, the amount of power that Logos has to bring to bear to search all of those things that quickly is immense. I was just talking to somebody on Facebook this weekend. They downloaded Logos6. It crashed their machine. They went to Best Buy's. The Geek Squad said, that program that you're using, that logo, whatever it is, it's full of viruses and it's ruining your computer. You need to just take it off. It's just a bad program. Well, that's not what's happening. The truth is she bought a Black Friday special. The Friday after Thanksgiving, she got a laptop for like $100. And it's killing her laptop because she doesn't have enough memory. She's got like 2 gigs of RAM. She's got like a 64 gig hard drive or something. I mean, the computer's just not strong enough to run the program. You may have times when your program lags, okay? If it does, I'm going to try to give you tips as we go through to speed it up. But you do need to understand, this program is bringing a lot of computing power to bear. There's a couple of things that will happen. One is you'll see a lag. 2, you may see that while you run Logos that your computer heats up some. Your fans may kick on. The computer may get hot. Now, it shouldn't get overly hot, but sometimes laptops get pretty warm. That's because it's using so much computing power. It's using your CPU so much that the computer's trying to keep the CPU cool while it works. That's natural, but it does show you this thing is really using the resources of your computer to get this stuff done. And so if you find some things that are a lag, changing some settings will help. One of the settings is in this information window, just making it on click instead of on hover. And now when I go over here, when I point to this, nothing happens. But if I click on Saints, the information window updates. If I click on Overseers, just one click, the information window updates. Okay? So, and look at all the information it had. I clicked on Overseer. Look at all the information it's giving me about Overseers. I mean, I've got a TD&T article in here. I got all kinds of stuff set up to go into mine. But it's telling me that what the Greek parsing is. It's connected to the Strong's numbers, and then it's looking up the Strong number and all kinds of stuff. It's looking at semantic features. It's looking at definitions. It's looking at articles. It's looking up all kinds of stuff about Overseers just by clicking on the word Overseer. So the information panel can be a little bit of an overload, but it's pretty cool how much information you can get just by clicking on a word. Down in the lower right-hand corner, you have this text comparison. Now, I want to go back to just Philippians 1:1. It should just be Philippians 1:1. And this should be Philippians 1:1 too. Why it picked up 1 through 6, I'm not sure. But your text comparison should really just be Philippians 1:1. And you'll notice it's comparing the same Bibles that it has up here. Okay? But what it's doing is it's showing you an interesting comparison. Now, here's a screen real estate trick. It's kind of hard to look at this panel when it's down in this lower right-hand corner, right? It's a little bit small, it's a little squished. One of the things you can do is you can float a panel, and then you can unfloat a panel. In the text comparison, if you go in the upper right-hand corner of this panel and click, you've got this reference or this resource menu. And you'll notice that you've got down here, float this panel. When you float the panel, what it does is it brings it up in its own window and makes it big in the middle of your screen. It's now floating outside of your workspace. You follow? And so now I can see it easier. But notice what it does. My New American Standard is my preferred Bible, right? So it shows that first. And then it shows the differences with the New King James. For example, the word bondservants in the New American Standard is changed to bondservants without, as one word in the New King James. New King James just uses it as one word. Of Jesus Christ, and they have Christ Jesus. So you start to see the things that are different. And it tells you the percentage of difference. For example, the New King James says that it's 17.9% different from the New American Standard. The ESV is 10% different. The King James is 29% different. Now, I've had people be confused by that. Does it mean that the King James is 29% wrong compared to the... No, it's just 29% of the words are different than the New American Standard. Max, you had a hand up?
I was trying to figure out how to bring up the differences, but I think I found it.
Yours wasn't showing the differences?
No, it doesn't.
I just clicked on that down arrow in the upper left-hand corner and clicked Show Differences.
Right. In this panel menu, you've got Show Differences. Sorry. I thought that was by default. And then you can also click on these two letters that are at the top here, Show Differences, and Show Base Text, right up here, next to the versions that it's displaying. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
So you can turn off Show Differences and turn off Base Text, and it's basically just going to show you each one. But if you click on Show Differences, it's going to bring those differences up. Okay? Now, notice, too, that you do have a series of versions that you can use here, and you can type in a different set. You can create different sets, and it remembers these sets over time. I think it remembers the last 5 that you did. And in this case, if I wanted to compare a different set, I could just click on this, and it would change. Like if I click on this one, it's just going to compare the ESV, the New King James, the KJV, 1900, and the NIV. So you can type these in if you just put a comma next to them. So I can do the NASB, comma, KJV. And as you start to type, notice it wants to help you. So I can click on that one and the New King James. Click on that one. And now it's just going to compare those. So you can set this up to compare whatever versions you want. Now, how do I put this panel back? Well, I go into my resource menu, and I say dock this panel. Now, this is a problem with Logos that drives me crazy. It drives us all crazy, and they haven't fixed it yet. Notice what it did. It didn't put the panel back where you got it from. I hate that. Absolutely hate it, okay? When you have a complex layout, when you float a panel, when you redock it, it seems to have a mind of its own as to where it's going to redock it. Now, in order to get the layout back to the way we wanted it before, if I grab this tab where it says comparison, and I click on the tab and I start to drag, see the gray box that it's telling me where, if I let go of it, where it'll land. So I just drag down to the bottom and let go, and now it's back to where it was before. That's going to be, we're going to play with that a lot as we create our own custom layouts, but just click the tab and drag it down. Most of the time, when you float a panel, Logos is not going to put it back where you got it from. I don't know why that's an issue. I don't know why they can't seem to fix it, but they don't fix it. So, all right. So those are the 4 panels to the right-hand side. The real power of this report is in the left-hand column. You have a passage guide that starts with a passage guide. So I mentioned that there are 4 guides that are important. And you really do need to understand what they do and why they do them and how that all works. But basically the 4 are passage guide, exegetical guide, Bible word study guide, and then topical guide. So it starts with a passage guide. Passage guide does exactly what you think it does. It deals with the passage as a whole. Okay? So when you think of passage guide, it's kind of that 10,000-foot view of the passage. It's going to deal with everything that's related to the entire passage, not the words in the passage, right? Exegetical guide is then going to break down the passage by the component words of the passage and let you look at each individual word. And then if there's a particular word you want to focus on, you're going to click on that one and generate a Bible word study guide, which is only going to deal with that one word. Okay? So, passage deals with the whole passage. Exegetical breaks the passage down into its component words. Bible word then focuses on one of those words. You follow the flow? That, if you can get that logic in your head, these guides will be much more useful to you. Because what am I trying to do? Am I trying to look at the whole passage overall, just get an understanding of where it is, what it says, that kind of stuff? Or am I looking for the words in the passage, or am I looking at a specific word? So, when we deal with the passage guide, you'll notice that there are a number of these little panels. Now, one of the tricks to making your computer work faster is to make sure that, see these little expansion arrows? That's what I call them. Some people call them context arrows. These little arrows next to each panel collapse and expand those sections. When you first run this, the default used to be that every panel was open, right? And so it expands all of these. What I suggest you do is go through and close each one. Now here's the reason why. When the passage guide launches, it doesn't compute the section until you expand the section. But if they're all expanded by default, then it takes time for each section to be generated while it's generating the passage guide. And that can really slow your computer down, especially if it's running a passage guide and an exegetical guide at the same time, and all of those panels are expanded. It's got to populate each one of those panels in both reports in the background while you're trying to do stuff, and sometimes it won't let you start interacting with the program until that's done. Now again, if you've got a very powerful computer that has tons of RAM and plenty of CPU and lots of hard drive in it, it doesn't seem to be a problem. Leave as many open as you want. But this is a tremendous speed saver. Plus it lets you see, in my opinion, it lets you see the contents of these guides more clearly. Because if everything's expanded, you really don't see what you have available to you. All right? Does it make sense? Max?
Once they're all closed, they'll stay like that the next time you open them?
Yes. And so if you leave one open, it'll open that one. Like mine had one open. Mine had media resources open when I launched it because the last time I closed it, it was open. That panel was open. But at least that's only one or two instead of all of them. So it's much faster.
When we did that floating screen, you showed us how to bring that text comparison back down. I just lost mine completely. Where would I find it? It's just gone. All I have is the information on that side.
Okay, at this point,
Doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter for the rest of this discussion. You could go back to the home page and regenerate the whole word study.
Oh, okay.
Or it's under Tools. Text comparison is under Tools, Passage, Text comparison, and that'll bring that window back up, and then you can drag it into place.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep. Okay, so let's talk about a passage guide. Notice it starts out with Philippians 1:1, and if you expand this, there's nothing underneath this. Now, if you fill this out and you give this report a title and a description, it will save this passage guide. Now, I'll be honest with you, I've yet to realize why I need to save these guides. They rerun so quickly. I mean, if I just type in Philippians 1:1 and go to the passage guide, it recreates this report so fast that I haven't ever really found a need to save these, but you can. If you give it a title and you say Philippians study or Philippians 1:1 study, it will save this as a document, and you can find it in your documents menu.
Even if you save it though, doesn't it regenerate when you, I mean, doesn't it take the same amount of time?
Yes, but there are some places where you can add notes to this that it wouldn't regenerate those notes, and I'll show you those. So that's the advantage, is if you put a lot of little notes in. I just don't put the additional notes in here, but I'll point those out to you as we come across them. So the first tab doesn't really matter much to me. What's your first tab under Philippians 1:1?
Commentary.
Why do they do this? Why is the first thing they want to show you commentary?
Probably pretty normal for anybody to do.
Because that's the way everybody studies the Bible. I need to find somebody to tell me what all this means, right? And so the first thing that they give you is commentaries. I hate that the first thing they give you is commentaries, but click on the little expansion joint, the little expansion arrow, and it should give you like your top 6 commentaries. But also notice that there's a little button that says More. Click on More.
Yeah.
Mine will take a while. What is your librarian now doing for you?
Pulling out every commentary.
She's gone to your bookshelves and she's grabbed every commentary that you have that deals with Philippians 1:1, and she's not only put them all on your desk, she's put a little bookmark in Philippians 1:1. So all you have to do is click on one of them, and it's going to open to Philippians 1:1. You don't have to flip through it. All you have to do is click on one, and it's going to open to Philippians 1:1. So if I click on the Bible Knowledge Commentary, it's going to open a panel. Probably should put it in my commentary panel, and mine's acting really slow for some reason. Probably because I have lots of stuff running. There we go. That will help. Get rid of some of this stuff that's running, and now it did it much faster. But look at all the commentaries that I have available in my library. If I just click on the Holman Concise Bible Commentary, it dumped it into my commentary panel. But it's already open to Philippians 1:1. So she just took all of your commentaries and put a little piece of paper on every page that you need, and they're all right there for you. Okay? Now I'm going to go ahead and collapse that to get it out of the way.
Notice, Mike, that the little A went away.
Right. On the new ones that you open, those tabs aren't necessarily linked that way. Your original one was, but the new ones aren't. You'd have to set those, and I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. But yeah, the new ones that are open aren't automatically linked into the system. Now, I don't want commentaries to be the very first thing it shows me. So if I just click on the title where it says commentaries, click and hold, I can drag this panel down this list. And wherever I'm going to put it down past outlines, for example, just for fun, and I'm going to let go of it. Now I've reordered this report, okay? So the reason I'm showing you that is you have control over what comes up in what order, okay? All you got to do is drag it around the way you want it. Make sense? Okay, what's next in yours?
Journals.
Okay, and my journals show no results. Yours probably do too, probably because you don't have many journals in yours, but there are no journal articles that it found on 1:1. So that's another reason to keep these things collapsed. Because if there are no results, you don't want to waste time searching your library to find out there's no results. You know, if that's collapsed, you don't have to worry about it. Next is cross-references. If you click on cross-references, now mine has 2 books. Yours may only have 1. Does anybody not have something in cross-references? Everybody's got something, right? Now, mine are the New Treasury of Scripture Knowledge and the Treasury of Scripture Knowledge. Yours may be both of those, or yours may just be one of those. But these are books that you can actually find in our library. I think the old printed copy of the Treasury of Scripture Knowledge is available in our library. And these are just books that are a mass of cross-references for Philippians 1:1. Now, in your paper Bible, what's the hassle of using cross-references?
In your paper Bible?
Yeah, when you pull out your paper Bible, you know, you have side column references and it has all these cross-references. What's the hassle of doing that?
Well, you have to keep look at a number, keep flipping back and forth, and
okay. What do you have to do here?
Just click on it. Click on it.
No, don't click. Just point. There's Acts 9:13. There's Acts 13:9. There's Acts 16:1. There's Acts 16:12-40. There's Acts 20. You don't have to click. And as a matter of fact, it's a problem if you do click, because it's going to send your Bible to that verse. So the advantage of being able to create these lists of scripture cross-references now that are usable becomes much more powerful, because all you got to do is point at it and it'll show you the verse. And you can say, okay, that relates to what I'm looking at, or it doesn't. How many times in your cross-references in your Bible have you flipped to the Old Testament, you looked it up and you were like, why did they put that as a cross-reference? I don't understand what the connection is. Or you think, okay, that's kind of connected, but not really. Well, you feel like you waste your time, and after a while, what do you start doing?
Google.
Yeah, you stop using your cross-references, right? Well, here, you can scan through them so fast you can determine which ones work and which ones don't.
When a cross-reference is as long as this 16:12-40, you can't see all of that just by hovering. Do you have to click to see the whole?
Yes. Now, you used to be able to...
I couldn't figure a way to make it scroll.
You used to be able to click once, and it would freeze the pane, and then you could scroll the pane. But it seems like it takes your Bible to that verse now. I think they've eliminated that ability.
It says you can open it in a new tab, but would that take the Bible there as well?
Right, yeah, that opens a new Bible tab, and then would take your Bible there. So it used to be in these cross-references, you could click once and it would freeze it, and then you could scroll it, but it looks like they've removed that. Now, also notice that you can save this list of cross-references as a passage list. We haven't talked about passage lists, but it would take all of these cross-references and it would put them in a passage list for you. Again, because of the random nature sometimes of cross-references, I don't find that very helpful. It dumps them all into a list that you can look at, and there's a lot of things you can do with passage lists to manipulate them. But if you were going to narrow this down, you could dump it into a passage list and then delete out the ones that you didn't want, and what you'd be left with is a passage list on Philippians 1:1. We'll talk about passage lists later. You can also open all 68 passages in the New American Standard. That's a new link. I'm not going to click on it right now because I'm not sure what it's going to... I'm going to click on it.
Mine says 60.
Okay, I'm still not sure what it did. It's filtered the passage guide, and it's done some kind of a filter, so I'm going to remove that. So anyway, so you have all these cross-references that you can explore, but remember that all you have to do is hover over them, and most passages in the cross-references are small enough to fit in those hover boxes without needing to scroll them. Yes?
It looks like when you clicked on it, it put them in your Bible tab, right?
Yes.
So now... Is Philippians still in there? Is that at the top or something?
Actually, use your back button, and it should take you back.
You can click the move filter.
Well, no, he's talking about if you just clicked on one of the cross-references, it moved your Bible.
Yeah.
So now, depending on how many you clicked on, you can use your back button. I haven't talked about forward and back, but you see in the Bible panel you have a forward and a back button, where it's just like a web browser. The one pointing to the left goes back, the one pointing right goes forward. So you'd have to do that. Or just type Philippians 1:1 back in the reference box in that Bible panel if you've gone too far. Now, you noticed an interesting problem, and we will solve the problem later. If you click on a cross-reference, what are you studying here? What are we studying in this layout right now?
Well, I don't know if, I don't quite understand myself. Is it Philippians 1:1 altogether?
Yeah, we're just looking at Philippians 1:1, right?
So a word within it, or I don't know?
Well, right now we're just looking at Philippians 1:1 as a whole, right? But if I click on one of these cross-references to Colossians 1:2, for example, notice what happened. My Bible panel changed to Colossians 1:2. Since my commentary was linked, it went to Colossians 1:2, and so did my text comparison window. Well, that's not really what I want, is it? I'm studying Philippians 1:1, not Colossians. So I'll show you later on how we can solve that. But understand that when you click on a hyperlink, if you have panels connected, they're all going to go to that hyperlink. So in this case, I'm going to click the back button on my Bible. It's going to take me back to Philippians 1:1, and since they're linked, my commentary goes back to 1:1, my text comparison goes back to 1:1. Okay? So those are cross-references. What's next in your list?
Ancient literature.
Ancient literature is new. And if you click on ancient literature, you're going to see something really, really cool. This is a neat new tool for Logos6. This wasn't available in Logos5. And what it does is it searches the ancient works that you have, and it tells you these ancient literary sources mention Philippians 1:1. Now, how does it mention Philippians 1:1? You'll notice that there's a number of groups. First, the early church fathers quote from Philippians 1:1, and it gives you some sources. And if I click on this, I'm going to look at Chrysostom, and in that passage, he quotes Philippians 1:1. Now, how many of you remember language and research? All of you put your hands down because you don't remember, but if I told you to go find an early church father's article that quoted Philippians 1:1, what would you have had to do?
Spend about a half hour.
It would have taken you, and once you get used to it, maybe 10 or 15 minutes. How did I get to an article? I'm going to click on it to open it just so that you can see it. How did I get to this article by John Chrysostom quoting Philippians 1:1 in the early church fathers? How did I get here?
By a couple of clicks.
But all I did to start with was I started on my homepage and typed in Philippians 1:1, right? That's all I did.
This is what we needed in language and research.
This is what you needed in language and research, and this is why you didn't get it in language and research. Because now you understand the power of what this is doing. If you hadn't had to jump through all of that, you really wouldn't understand everything that's going on to get you here. This is kind of like I had to make you walk uphill in the snow to school so that you would appreciate shoes in a car, right?
Because you're honestly not going to ever use that library upstairs again, are you?
Yes, you are.
Oh.
Yeah, there are a lot of things, especially brotherhood material, that you aren't available.
I'm talking about like these major books like Chrysostom, and you're not going to...
Not as much. Not nearly as much.
The only thing that I think that could be cooler is if we could have a tab that like would cite it MLA into like so we could copy and paste it over.
Okay, notice my little info button here on Chrysostom.
Oh, it does that.
I scroll down, here's an MLA citation for this article, and I can hit copy. I can go to my Pages document.
It is there.
Excuse me, it's the article citation that I need. I can click copy, go to my Pages document, hit paste, and I've just cited this source in MLA in my Pages document.
That just seems unfair.
It does seem unfair, doesn't it?
That's not even...
And for guys like Denny Petrillo, he's like actually angry about all of the hours he used to spend having to do this stuff. And now he's programmed to go click.
I'm angry that on Saturday I went through the library and got sources for a paper. Saturday.
In Africa, there's a phrase that they use all the time, and it's "Pole mama." Sorry, mama. And it's like saying sorry sister, or, pole buona for the boys, sorry brother, pole mama, sorry sister. And, you do say something like that and they're like, pole mama. Yeah, but now you see, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to try to get Logos earlier in the quarter, but and this is as early as I can start. So how did I get to this article by John Chrysostom in the early church fathers? I typed in Philippians 1:1 on the homepage and said, do a homepage Bible study. Okay, so back to ancient literature. These are sources that quote Philippians 1:1. These are sources that have allusions to Philippians 1:1. What's the difference between a quotation and an allusion?
One states it outright, one just kind of talks about the idea.
Yes, one that matches the same idea but doesn't necessarily use a word-for-word quotation or a direct quotation. And then there's a topical reference. So these are all early church fathers articles that talk about something similar to the verse that you're looking at, topically. Even the Dead Sea Scrolls, since I have some resources on the Dead Sea Scrolls in my library, it'll actually connect me to Dead Sea Scrolls resources. Now, if you point at and this is my one.
I want to bring it up.
Okay, click on it. Why didn't it bring it up? No resources in your library. What does it say next?
They're available for purchase.
These resources are available to purchase. Okay? Now, this is new to Logos6. This is the first time they've really invaded our space like this. They're getting a lot of flack for it. Again, I understand that they are a company who's designed to sell books and make money. So what they did was in their search, they said, there's more information out there if you want it. Do you want it? You can buy this book. And if you click on those, it'll take you to the Logos homepage. You can order the book. It'll download it, and then it's there. What I don't like is that the hyperlink doesn't tell you that this is a book available for purchase. There should be an extra section here. What we're trying to convince Logos to do is create a section of this report that says additional resources that you don't own or something, so that you can spot the difference. In this case, you can't spot. The way you can tell is if you hover over the hyperlink. If it doesn't open up a resource window, you don't own it. Okay? And if you click on it, it'll tell you how to buy it.
But it is literally showing all that Logos has in their entire library.
Yeah, for the most part. I don't know. I mean, using that word all always worries me. Have they included every single thing? I know they're working on including every single thing in their resources, yes, so that they can try to sell you more books. I mean, and when you think about it from a company standpoint, while it may be irritating to us as an end user, isn't it smart on their point to say, you were asking about this information, you don't own this book, but here's a book that you could buy that will give it to you. Do you want the book? Were you going to say something?
I was going to say, I agree. I think it's good that they do that, but like what you were saying, I just wish they told you before.
Right, it's just kind of irritating. And then lexical work that's going to deal with some of the same Greek structure or same Greek words. The works of Philo are going to be connected as well. So all of this connection to ancient literature is right here. Now, the other thing that it's done is this is filtered by type of reference, quotation, allusion, topical, and so on. You also can resort this report by work. And what that then does is it says, these are all the links in the Apostolic Fathers. These are all the links in the early church fathers. Here's all the links in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Here's all the links in Philo. Okay? So it's just a way of presenting you with the same information in a different structure. I tend to just leave it at type because I'm usually, if I'm looking at this, I want to see where it's been quoted from. And I don't want to have to look at all of them. But very cool. Clicking on this window, in this panel, Jerome is quoting from Philippians 1:1, and it's probably in one of these little footnotes. I'd have to spot it. But I now have a reference to Jerome, who was part of the Nicene, post-Nicene Fathers. If it's Nicene and post-Nicene Fathers, when was Jerome written roughly? after what?
8325.
Huh?
8325.
325, after AD 325, so you could do some research and find out when, Jerome lived, but it would be after 325. If it's from the early church fathers, if it's from the ante-Nicene fathers, it's before 325. So you've got all of this information and all this connection to ancient literature. And how did you find all of these references to ancient literature?
I typing in Philippians 1:1
on the homepage. That's all you did. Okay? So, huh?
By looking up the number 9 book, volume 9?
Yeah. All right, so that's ancient literature. What's next?
Parallel passages.
Okay, you should have parallel passages.
Yeah.
If you click on it, you're going to see no results. Why? Because there are no parallel versions to Philippians. Now, if you were in the Gospels, the parallel passages would show you parallel passages in all the other Gospels and so on. Now, one of the places where we don't think about parallels that comes in handy are things like 2 Peter and Jude. We think of parallels only in the Gospels. But when you realize that I think there's like 27 direct references between 2 Peter and Jude, there's a whole reference section in parallel passages between Peter and Jude. So don't always blow that off if you're not in the Gospels. There are some other places where parallels occur. Most of the time it is the Gospels, though. And since we're not in the Gospel, we don't see it. What is literary typing? This is going to tell you the kind of literature you're looking at. So what is Philippians? Well, it's a letter. It's a community letter. And it's going to go through literary typing and show you the structure of a letter. Is it important to know what kind of literary type you're dealing with?
Yes.
Why?
Because it can determine how you, it does determine how you exegete a passage.
Absolutely. If it's figurative language, if it's history, if it's poetry, you need to know those things, and literary typing can get you connected to all that. Cultural concepts, there aren't any in Philippians 1:1, but this is something we'll come back to. This is a new tab in Logos as well. We'll come back to it. Notice outlines should be next. Your librarian went through all of the books in your library, and since you were in Philippians, she assumes you want to see outlines for the book of Philippians everywhere they occur. Now, this in and of itself is an extremely powerful feature. First of all, you should be developing your own outlines for Bible books, should you not? Exegetes, right? As we learn to study contextually, we should be doing this ourselves. But we should also be comparing them to what some other people have seen as an outline so that we can see, hey, they saw something I didn't see or whatever. But what your librarian did was she went through all your dictionaries and encyclopedias, and she looked at every article that deals with Philippians and said, is there an outline to the book in this article? If there is, here's a link to it. So now it's not only just finding articles that are about Philippians, now it's only showing you the outlines from those articles. She's now digging into the articles themselves and trying to get information for you, rather than just say, here's everything about Philippians, deal with it. Now she's saying, no, are you looking for outlines? Here's all the outlines I can find. And you'll notice I've got 7 or 8. If I click the more button, it's going to give me a whole bunch more. Now, Max, how many outlines do you have on your list?
9.
9. Anybody have less than 9? Okay, how many do you have? None?
Yeah, there's no outlines.
You mean as a total in the outline box here?
Yeah. You don't have. Are you still indexing? Did you just start to install?
No, I installed it a couple weeks ago.
Is it still indexing at the top?
Indexing.
It's still indexing. Okay. When indexing is not done, your librarian can't work. Okay? She's going to look for outlines and not be able to find them because she doesn't know where they are. So indexing becomes really important. Why do I have 27 or so outlines and Max has 9?
Because you probably have a bigger library.
Right. Here's the advantage of libraries and the size of your library. A lot of guys look at the initial cost and say, I'm going to get silver because I can afford it. And I get that. But the tools become more powerful as your library grows. Just like back when Donnie was in school here at Bear Valley. Was the library upstairs when you were here?
Yeah, Cheryl's office.
Yeah, the library, our entire library fit in Cheryl Turner's office when Donnie was in school here. Now, how much more useful is the library you guys have as opposed to the library he had?
Much.
Much. Just simply because of the volume of volumes that you have available to you. Just like Denver Seminary, quite often, is far more useful than our library. Even though our library is very good, Denver Seminary just has so much more material, you can find more things. The same is true with your Logos library. If you bought a relatively small library and you keep it small, it's going to have limited functionality in some of these areas. As you grow your library, as you upgrade, as you can, and as you can afford it, I get that it's expensive, but as you expand your library, now you have more information available in some of these reports than you might otherwise have. You see? Now, I'm not advocating, spending tons of money you don't have, but once you commit to a digital library, growing that library can be valuable to you. And there is value in upgrading and getting more books.
But having like 300 possibilities and outlines starts to be a little overkill.
Right, and I've got 3,000 books in my library, and this is all the outlines I have. So I have, 20 here? So we're not going to get to that point where it was some of these. Now, some of these other reports are going to have a lot of hits. My commentaries would be, miles long, and I've got to sort through that. But as far as some of these tools, you're not going to get quite to that point. But if you only have one or two on some of these reports, one of the limiting factors is the size of the library you purchase. And if you're unhappy with that, selection, your choice is upgrade to a larger library. Now, while you're in school, you can upgrade to the larger libraries for 50% off and get the discount. Even if you bought silver and you want to move to platinum, you'll get the difference in price, 50% off, and, so it's a good time, while you're in school, it's a good time to buy whatever library you want to buy, as long as you can afford it. Okay, so there's outlines. So here's, like the Bible guide. All I got to do is hover on it, and I see the outline, right? It's right there. Or here's the Bible exposition commentary. All I got to do is hover on it and see the outline. If I want to open the book, I just click on it once, it opens the book, and there's the outline that I'm looking at from that particular resource. So if you're trying to, maybe you haven't had time to do your own outline of Philippians, and you need to look at something. Well, you can look at a number of different options as far as how different men have outlined the book of Philippians, and you can make some choices as to what you're seeing as the structure. So these are good opening possible starts to analyzing the book. How did I get to a page of 27 different outlines on Philippians? I typed Philippians 1:1 on the homepage. That's all I did. I didn't have to go find all of my dictionaries. I didn't have to go digging in. I just typed Philippians 1:1. I drug commentaries all the way down here. So the next is biblical people. Now, there's a reason I chose Philippians 1:1 as this exercise. We missed some things, parallel passages, for example, but we get some other things. So what biblical people does, and biblical people is a really cool report. What biblical people does is it looks at the passage that you're looking at, and it says, is anybody mentioned in that passage? In this particular case, I have Paul mentioned by name, I have Timothy mentioned by name, and Jesus is mentioned by name. And so in this biblical people report, you'll notice I got the church at Philippi, I've got the concept of a church, but I also have Timothy, and as I scroll down, I have Paul, and so on. Notice Timothy here. I'm just going to click on Timothy's name so that we can see this report bigger. And what happens is it opens up a fact book. I mentioned the fact book earlier. It opens up a fact book on Timothy. Now, in order to see this better, I'm going to float this panel. And look at all the information it's going to give me about Timothy. It's going to show me events that are related to Timothy. It's going to show me dictionary articles related to Timothy. It's going to give me how he's referred to in Scripture. It's going to give me Greek words related to Timothy. It's going to give me library searches. It's going to give me community tags. It's going to give me all this information about Timothy. But the other thing that it does is you see these weird little charts. These are family trees. And if you click on the very first one, again, it's going to throw it down into this panel. I'm going to float this so that we can see it a little bit better. This gives us Timothy's family tree. And it's a little small, I recognize. I can zoom with my fingers. If you just pinch and zoom, or if you use your scroll wheel, if your trackpad on your PC has a scroll wheel, you should be able to use the scroll wheel and it should zoom in and out. But you'll notice Lois is his grandmother and Eunice is his mother, right? And I've got all this family tree information about Timothy. I can look at family trees. You can look at all these different formats. You can look at it minimal, which is just names, or vibrant, or classic, or in little stick figures, or cartoon. I always like cartoon. I like the guys have these little one-eyed mustache. It's like, what's up with that? Like Monsters, Inc. or something. Comic and graffiti. So you can look at various things. But you've got all this information, and if you click on the family tree, it'll expand out the family tree, which is very cool. So you've got all this family tree information about Timothy. Now, imagine doing the family tree for somebody like David. Well, let's do that. Click on family tree. Let's see. They've changed how this works now, so this is interesting. Go to the family tree. I'm going to float this panel so you all can see. I can click on this little table of contents arrow that's right next to where it says family tree Timothy. I can right click on this, and then I should be able to find David in the list. This used to be somewhat easier. So family tree David. And then I can get rid of that table of contents by just clicking that arrow again. Look at the family tree of David. I mean, all of the different wives and which kids were from which wives and all of that kind of stuff all moves through. David's in the middle. Jesse, his connection to Jonathan, each of the wives. And if I wanted to look, for example, at Jesse's family tree, all I have to do is double click on Jesse, and it's going to run the report on Jesse for me. And give me his family tree, access, and all that kind of stuff. So, see all the information that you can get from the people that are listed? Now, back in the panel, next to the word Timothy, you see all of these verses? What do you think these are? Take a guess.
All the references to Timothy?
Every place in the New Testament that refers to Timothy. Now, whenever you see a list like this, you always want to look at the end of the list. See how the end of this list has an ellipsis? What's an ellipsis?
It's continued.
3 periods. What does an ellipsis always tell you?
It's
There's
more.
So click on the ellipsis.
Wow.
There is every New Testament passage that refers to Timothy. And how do we explore this list? Just point. And it's going to show you.
So what you're saying is the Bible is about Timothy?
Well, no, because this really is, if you were looking at somebody like David or Paul or Peter, I mean, the list is significantly larger. But how did I just find a list of every New Testament reference to Timothy? How did I find that list?
Type in Philippians 1:1.
Type Philippians 1:1 and hit enter. And you can see, and we haven't even gotten halfway through the passage guide yet, and we haven't even touched the exegetical guide yet, and all we did was type in Philippians 1:1. Are you starting to see the power of this librarian that's working for you? The strength of this computer is immense. We're finally using a computer to do more than just be a digital word processor or an electronic typewriter. Now we're using the power of computers to analyze text and bring all these resources to bear and make them available to you. And this, literally, in the snap of your fingers, you now have access to all of this material. How much time would you have spent in the library just looking at what we found in the passage guide in the last 45 minutes?
Hours, days.
I would argue potentially weeks to get it all. But at least days. And we found it all. How long did it take to generate this report once you type Philippians 1:1? Seconds. And it's all right there for you.
And then when you're out in full-time ministry, you're not going to have a library like you have here.
Exactly. Now imagine that you're in the middle of Africa teaching.
You might get lucky to have.
Guess what? All of this information is with me. I can't get to the library. All of this, my 3,000 books go with me, and my librarian does too, and I can sit literally in a hut in Africa and do all of this research and find connections to the early church fathers and to Jerome and Chrysostom and all of that stuff. I can document those sources in an article and send it off to Gospel Advocate, and I don't even have a library around. So,
How much of this can we do offline?
all of it. None of this is connected to resources all of these resources are on your computer. When you sign on, it asks you if you want to work offline, if you don't have an internet connection, but it doesn't limit the functionality at all. It limits the ability to synchronize these reports up to the cloud so that you can get to them later, or synchronize your settings. But all of your resources are on that laptop. Wherever that laptop goes, you can be in the middle of a cornfield and you can do everything we did this morning.
How much
Not nearly as much. We're going to do a little section at the end on the iPad and the phone to show you what tools are there. There's a lot of power there, but nothing anywhere near like this.
Yeah,
I think my mouth was